Asia office in Bahrain. So Itaf, over to you, please.
Thank you, Abdel Menam. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad that you're able to join us today on the second day of the Digital Transformation Conference. As Abdel Menam said, my name is Aitaf Shahadi, and I'm the Regional Coordinator for the Healthy and Productive Ecosystems Subprogram in the West Asia Office. I would like to welcome our panelists today, and particularly as we kick off this morning, our session today will focus on digital solutions for biodiversity loss. So in West Asia, there are prevailing anthropogenic pressures in the form of urban expansion, pollution, overconsumption of biological resources beyond the region's capacity, biocapacity of ecosystems, and modification of habitats. These pressures put biological resources at risk, resulting in a number of critical challenges to biodiversity and causing further biodiversity degradation. This session on nature and biodiversity will explore related digital tools and big data analytics that are used to monitor, value, and predict risks to natural capital. Kicking us off this morning, I'd like to introduce Ms. Marian Marigo, who has sent us a video ahead of time to be presented on her behalf. Her pre-recorded video will show technologies that help policymakers and other stakeholders understand the Earth's movement and related data to effectively make key conservation and development decisions. Ms. Zhang will serve as the representative during the Q&A session. We can go ahead and play the video.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Marigo. I'm a capacity building and biodiversity specialist at UNDP Global Program on Nature for Development. Thank you to our partners, UNEP West Asia office in Bahrain, for organizing this conference and inviting us. Today, I will give a short presentation, and I will leave you with my colleague Zhang for the questions in the panel. Thank you.
Today, I want to discuss how spatial data is key to move towards a more sustainable relationship with our planet. Humanity depends on nature in fundamental ways. As it stands, nature underpins more than half of the global GDP, or the equivalent to $44 trillion. In addition, nature is necessary to achieve half of the Sustainable Development Goals, and you know that we cannot minimize poverty or ensure water security without healthy ecosystems. The World Economic Forum has recently published the Global Risk Report 2020, where we can see that out of the 10 risks that will have the biggest impact, 7 are immediately linked to nature. And out of the 10 most likely to actually happen, 6 are related to nature. For the first time in the history of the survey, climate-related issues dominated all of the top 5 long-term risks by likelihood. Added risk includes stress on ecosystem, food and water crisis, increased migration, and economic impacts. More recently, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the report Climate Change 2021 with figures, in fact, more than ever alarming for our planet and its world population. For instance, it's written that global surface temperatures will continue to increase until at least the mid-century under all emission scenarios considered. 4 trends currently define our future. First, biodiversity loss, since we're on track to lose more than 1 million species by mid-century. Climate change, you know that we have less than 10 years to take action to mitigate the catastrophic impacts of climate change. Inequality, nature loss places 2 billion people in acute water insecurity and threatens the livelihood of more than 2 billion people who depend on farms, forests, and fishery to survive. And, well, infectious disease. I'm addressing you virtually now because we have been in a pandemic for more than a year now due to mostly the destruction of nature and contact with wilderness. All of these are linked to nature loss. But there is a solution, at least part of the solution: spatial data. We have produced more data in the past 2 years than in all human history combined. With over 2,000 satellites revolving around the Earth, spatial data can help countries accurately assess the status of their ecosystem and the services they provide. Indeed, spatial data is a key integrator. Spatial data can create a biodiversity baseline. It can unify competing national priorities into a single, scientifically grounded framework, and can help identify cross-cutting solutions to planning problems. Working closely with UNEP and the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, and with the funding from the Global Environment Facility, UNDP created UN Biodiversity Lab to support policymakers to develop policy-focused, data-driven, sustainable development solutions. So what's the UN Biodiversity Lab? The UN Biodiversity Lab is a free, open-source platform that provides policymakers with access to the best spatial data and analytic tools, regardless of their GIS experience. We created the UN Biodiversity Lab to support parties to the CBD to prepare their 6th national report. That led to a twofold increase in the number of maps between the 5th national report and the 6th national report, with a drastic increase in the quality of the maps on top of the quantity criteria. UNBL is a tool for putting nature at the center of sustainable development, as stakeholders are implementing the 2030 agenda and soon will start implementing the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So who uses the UN Biodiversity Lab? Currently, we have over 300 policymakers from 61 countries using the private workspace, but the website is also open to public and we have many more users. We're constantly trying to improve the platform to match the needs of the users, so if you do have any specific idea on how to use the platform, please feel free to be in touch with us and contact us, and we'll be very happy to support you in doing so. Now we would like to show you the new trailer for the new UN Biodiversity Lab. Enjoy.
From the streets of New York City to the heart of the Amazon, maps help us understand how our changing planet is affecting our lives. Maps help us see where nature is thriving and where it is being destroyed. Spatial data help decision makers put nature at the heart of sustainable development by helping them identify essential ecosystems that help us secure water, feed more than 7 billion people, avoid natural disasters, keep carbon in the ground, and sustain more than 2 billion livelihoods. We, at the United Nations, together with our partners, are excited to launch the next iteration of the UN Biodiversity Lab. We have updated the UN Biodiversity Lab with new data and new functions to help decision makers put nature at the heart of development. To access more than 400 cutting-edge global datasets, including the world's first 10-meter resolution land cover and land use map. To explore popular data collections that unlock the power of data on key thematic issues and that provide insights on how and where action is needed most. To create a secure workspace where you can upload your own data to generate your own insights on the intersection of nature, climate, and sustainable development. To calculate dynamic indicators such as deforestation, showing the state of the planet at the click of a button. To generate your own powerful maps that can guide local and national action for nature, climate, and sustainable development. Powered by Microsoft's Planetary Computer and supported by more than 30 data providers, the UN Biodiversity Lab provides novel insight that is essential for putting nature at the heart of sustainable development. Our goal is to enable everyone to harness the power of data, to equip policymakers with powerful tools to make more informed decisions on nature, and to be able to monitor the pulse of our planet. Join us. Start exploring today at unbiodiversitylab.org.
UN Biodiversity Lab is one of many platforms out there that are providing spatial data to users. However, we see three key areas that set us apart from other platforms. First, through our work with the CBD, we have ensured that spatial data has been included in decisions around the reporting process, which led to a broad political mandate for this work. Second, direct outreach to countries supported by UNDP and UNEP to develop their 6 national reports means that now we have a key network in place to engage users. And finally, our private national projects provide space for countries to upload their national data and use this when it's better than global data. We have heard so many times that this is absolutely essential for action at the national level. In the end, the UN Biodiversity Lab is not just about data, it's about our ability to create the connections to convert data into action. I will leave the slide on for a few seconds for you to use your camera and scan the QR code if you would like to, so you can have access to the global data layers that we have on the platform. Many of them are free to clip and download from the platform. But we can even go further in using spatial data. At UNDP, we're pioneering a process that allows decision makers to create a map of essential life support areas, or ELSAs, to help countries determine where nature-based action can preserve our ecological safety net while at the same time achieving development goals. Through a participatory process, we engage with national stakeholders and we focus on the most important nature-based targets in the country. Together, we identify key national and global datasets and apply a customized scientific analysis, running an optimization to define where to protect, sustainably manage, and restore nature. We are creating a map of hope. Once we have the maps, we then work with the countries to translate the results of the maps into policies. Costa Rica is working on using ELSA in its national adaptation plan, and Uganda, for instance, is working on developing its 5-year development plan building on the results of ELSA. For us, this is only the beginning, at least we're hoping. We are currently working with 12 countries in the world, and we really hope to be able to expand this project ELSA to maximize its impact. If you wish to learn more, I invite you to attend the Nature for Life Hub, a 4-day virtual event that will focus on transforming our relationship with nature. On October 4th, during the session Putting Nature at the Heart of Sustainable Development, you will be able to learn more about UN Biodiversity Lab, ELSA, and how partners such as Microsoft, CBD, or UNEP are using spatial data to protect and restore our planet. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention. Feel free to contact me. My email address is on the screen. I will leave my colleague Dee Zhang to answer any question you might have in the following panel. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you to Ms. Marina Morago, who has shared with us perhaps one of the most important tools we use, whether at UNEP or many other organizations, that is very, very useful and is actually a very open platform that anybody can access to help policymakers or anybody who's really, really interested with access to such important data to really help better decision making, and particularly when it comes to biodiversity, land management, and water use. So thank you to Ms. Marion Marigo. Any questions, of course, Ms. Dee Zhang will be taking at the end of the session. I would like to now introduce our next speaker, Mr. Hani Tamimi from the Environment Authority of Kuwait, who will be sharing with us Kuwait's active contribution to the World Database on Protected Areas and how it helps towards international environmental targets, such as the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, through monitoring and reporting. The floor is yours, Mr. Hani.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to all. A big thank you to the organizers and the panelists, and also the attendants for their interest and contribution. I'm Hani Tamimi, head of Natural Reserves Section in the Department of Biodiversity Conservation at the Environmental Authority in the State of Kuwait. I'll share with you my presentation. Our presentation is about Kuwait's active contribution to the World Database on Protected Areas through EMISC. Indeed, we are living at a digital age where we have the technology and the know-how to acquire or create information and present it, process it, manage it, and communicate it, and use it for everything in our lives. That was first started along the years, and in the past 2 years, because of the onset of the pandemic of COVID-19, it became a necessity because all the countries in the world have started to digitize all their operations, and everything, whether it's public or in the private sector. And here in Kuwait, we do the same. We have the same thing. We have a newly appointed minister for in communication and information technology. And actually, yesterday they had a digital transformation event for kickstarting a new app that gathers a lot of the government operations in one place for the public. A background of Environmental Public Authority of Kuwait. It was established back in 1995. And it's tasked with the general management of environmental affairs in the country and is annexed to the Council of Ministers and supervised by the Higher Council for the Environment. It creates and applies general environment policy for the country and strategies and work plans that aim for environment conservation and the sustainability of the natural resources to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. It also serves as the focal point for environmental conventions and agreements such as CBD, UNEP, everything. And one important note is the Environmental Protection Law that was issued, number 42 to 2014, pertaining to all matters that are concerned with the environment. Now coming to EMISC, Environmental Management Information System of Kuwait, established by Environmental Public Authority back in 2009, with the aim to establish, build, and maintain a comprehensive geo-environmental database of Kuwait, along with an enterprise-level GIS system for access, update, and analysis of the environmental data, and develop indicators on the state of the environment and other reliable environmental information. Its database encompasses all environmental information available in Kuwait to serve the electronic government. It includes 11 environmental ranges covering all the environment sections, with more than 250 updated geographic layers prepared for usage by applications, along with high-quality satellite images that covers Kuwait to track and monitor changes for the past 20 years. Now, touching on the issue of protected areas in Kuwait, according to Law 42/2014, there's a process of declaring protected areas in Kuwait, a newly forced one. Now, we've had protected areas in the past. The oldest ones are Al Jahra Natural Reserve and Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Natural Reserve. They were declared back in 1987. But newly ones have been declared since. And in all, we have 12 protected areas, with others joining, hopefully, in the coming years. 10 of these are terrestrial or coastal, and 2 are marine. The marine ones are Mubarak al-Kabir Marine Natural Reserve and Suwaybakhat Marine Natural Reserve. Now, if you go to the WDPA, you might find some different information that says we have 39 protected areas. Actually, they also add the proposed areas to the total number of protected areas. But according to now, these are the 12 declared and established ones. One addition is the border, the demilitarized zone in the north. It's protected. It can be an OECM, which is other effective area-based conservation measures, because it's a government and it's a border-controlled area. So, but they also have it in the WDPA. This is a map showing the 12 current protected areas in Kuwait, prepared by EMISC, of course, through their facility. Now, the information pathways, information sources for EMISC is from the government sector. Touching on the challenges and the opportunities. When EMISC was first established, they had the trouble of collecting all the data that was there, because back in 2009, most government and NGOs are keeping all the information to themselves to help give them possibly more control of the matters that pertain to them. But since then, with the advancement of technology and the awareness that we are all sharing the same goals and should share the same information. Memorandums of understanding was drafted between the EPA with EMISC to acquire all the information pertaining to all the data. And in addition to that, there is remote sensing data that in the form of remote sensing imagery that's also being added to the repertoire of EMISC. In addition to the organization data that we collect, the technical departments in EPA, and communicate it to EMISC to add it to their database. Now, there are two processes by which EMISC showcases or contributes their information to the others. There's the organization applications, which is the EMISC Enterprise, and this is the window by which the employees of EPA can actually gain entrance, gain access to the system, input data, and can extract information as much as they want for the past years from most of the available sectors. The other part is the official environmental gate for the state of Kuwait, our environment, biatuna.net. Biatuna means our environment, and it has six applications. Of course, if you go to the site, you'll find many articles, many images, and news from EPA and other sectors. But mainly the apps is the source of the information. There's an app for incident reporting, another for environmental alerts with the GIS viewer. There's an environmental atlas for all matters that are linked to the environment in Kuwait. There's Kuwait air quality application, which monitors at 24 hours in different parts of Kuwait. There is a drinking water quality application. And the last is the geographic information system, where you can actually draw your own maps using the layers that are provided by EMISC. Toward international environmental targets, such as 2030 Sustainable Development Goals through monitoring and reporting. From the 17 goals of sustainable development, the two that pertain to protected areas are mainly Goal 14, which to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, sea, and marine resources for sustainable development, and Goal 15, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. Now, through the information that we communicate to EMISC, there's a process of monitoring and reporting. We do it actually not just with EMISC, with other parts of the government through the Strategic Planning Office. They have certain indicators for the environment, and among which are the land covered, the area covered by protected areas. We do that on a yearly basis, and the same thing goes with EMISC. On an annual basis, they send us an Excel sheet with the designated and the proposed areas with the information that is collected by WDPA on their site, and ask us to review it and make changes as we see fit according to the latest information that we have. And if there are any additions, we just communicate it to them. So this is the process of reporting to EMISC. And from their part, they communicated to WDPA to make sure that the information is current and relevant. Actually, there was an exercise with the UNDP and the Secretariat of CBD in preparation for the 15th Conference of Parties, touching on the Biodiversity Target 11, which also has the same goal as the Sustainable Development Goals 14, 15, but it's setting a target that by 2020 we'll be conserving 17% of the terrestrial area and 10% of the marine area. And they asked us to review the data that is on WDPA and the WDOECM, which are held by UNEP WCMC. So we did that also. It was an exercise to encourage everyone to contribute to the WDPA and to actually be more forthcoming and more open to give out the information that they have. Now, when we come to the decision-making and the future of protected areas in Kuwait, the process of designating protected areas is thus: whatever we want to conserve, whether it's marine or terrestrial area or coastal area, we have to build the information. And through EMISC, they give us the opportunity to highlight it better, with several layers for the area itself. We ask for their consultants on whether there are any contradictions according to their knowledge with Kuwait municipality and the Kuwait master plan for land use. If there are any contradictions or any services for other ministries or other entities that can actually hinder the designation of that particular area. Then we can, after gaining approval from initial approval from the higher council of the environment, we communicate that through an official letter to Kuwait municipality in order for a decision to be made about that particular area. Of course, with all the pertaining data, with the coordinates and everything. And then after that is secured, then a decision from the environment higher council can be issued for that particular area. This is the process of designating the protected areas in Kuwait. Now we have new proposed protected areas in the terrestrial side: Fidat Sidr, Darub, Saad expansion. The MZ, we might actually ask for it to be an official protected area, and the Jdaliyat. And on the marine side, Kubbar Island, the three southern islands of Kubbar, Garo, and Umm al-Maradin, parts of Faylaka Island, and 2 parts of the southern Babian Island. And some of these are actually on the WDPA under the proposed areas. Others have newly been assigned. And I don't envy anyone who is working on the process of designating protected areas, because you're trying to convince everyone else that this area that has value, you wouldn't want to conserve it unless it had value, whether it's resources, its location, and everyone wants a piece of it, and everyone wants to have their project or something to do with it, and they are using technology to showcase what they can do with it. So you have to do the same. Actually, you have to do it better to convince the decision makers. And for that, you need information, you need knowledge, and you need it in digital form, because that's the base where you can actually have sound planning, and you can have proper management for those areas in order to sustainably develop them. And it doesn't hurt if you have an influential decision maker on your side, which is again something you can do if you have proper information, and you can actually convince people with that. So thank you for listening. I hope I didn't take long, and I hope it was informative to you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hani Tamimi. That was indeed, it's very impressive that EMISC started in 2009, and I think that was the beginning of all the transformation that we're doing in terms of digitalizing things and the move towards identifying what tools we need when it comes to supporting our ongoing conservation efforts, but also in terms of future planning. So thank you for that. I would like to now welcome our next speaker, Engineer Tariq Qanir, the head of Birds Projects Management Unit of the Royal Society for the Conservation of Nature in Jordan. who's going to highlight for us today the innovative bird tracking practices of Jordan's Royal Society for the Conservation of Nature to protect endangered species and maintain their ecological balance of the country. So over to you, Mohandas Tariq.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for introducing me. And it is my pleasure to participate in your conference. So let me to share my screen. So I will my presentation will talking about the using of tracking devices on endangered birds in Jordan. A quick just summary about the Royal Society for the Conservation of Nature. RSCN is an independent non-governmental organization established in 1966 under the patronage of His Majesty the late King Hussein. The Jordanian government given the responsibilities to RSCN to protect the kingdom's natural heritage, including establishing the natural reserves and managing the biodiversity conservation at the national level. Including the law enforcement, RSCN is the only NGO in the Middle East countries with a mandate from the government of Jordan to establish, manage, and operate natural reserve in Jordan, besides taking the full responsibilities for managing wildlife protection, hunting, monitoring, and control. The Jordanian government provided RSCN or devoted RSCN to implement the agricultural law relating to hunting, monitoring, and hunting management at the national level. So RSCN implementing this action with full cooperation with the Jordanian environmental police and with the agricultural Ministry of Agriculture. So as RSCN is managing the biodiversity conservation at the national level and the law enforcement, so RSCN established a raptor rehabilitation center. This center aid the bird of prey in their recovery from electrocution, shooting, collision, disease, poisoning, various injuries, and starvation, among other things. The raptors were brought to the RSCN Rehabilitation Center by either confiscated by RSCN Rangers, Royal Rangers, or environmental police, customs officers at port of entry, and brought by citizens. Rehabilitation centers may contribute to raptor conservation and research, as well as education of the public, and record keeping and post-release monitoring are essential for determining the efficiency of rehabilitation. This is some photos for rehabilitation center and caring of the bird. Each bird is carefully examined by trained wildlife biologists to determine its condition and the cause of injury. If any, with veterinaries consult for cases that require expert professional care. Raptors placed at the center were cared for until they're released or return to their owner. Each bird is individually evaluated before release. This evaluation included their response to human and feeding ability and flying behavior. This is some example for some birds. For example, debeaked lanner falcon, kestrel with broken wing, cinereous vulture with wing trauma. And we have another center in Chomari reserves. This is the center. This is center to care the this is the rehabilitation center in the Chomari wildlife reserves, and this is facilities were cared for during the endangered until they're released or returned back to the owner. Each bird is individually evaluated before release here in the center. This evaluation, as mentioned before, included their response to human feeding ability and the flying behavior while in the rehabilitation aviary. Before releasing, we have to confirm that the bears are widely behavior and can release to the wild before releasing in the wild. Before releasing, each bird or each raptor was ringed by the official RSCN rings. Ringing also proved to be very useful for recovery for released bird. Ringing has also provided a survival and dispersal information. We have had reported encounter of a lanner falcon from Saudi Arabia and a peregrine falcon from southern of Jordan. And in addition, a satellite and radio tracking to monitor moving of released raptor. Not each raptors, but some of endangered raptors are tagged with a satellite tracking and radio tracking to increase the ability to monitor birds post-release and to ensure the recovering procedure. Procedure is okay, and for example, Egyptian vulture, Cineras vulture, and the steppe eagles are tagged with the satellite tracking to provide us more data about the success of releasing and success of rehabilitation and recovery procedure in Jordan. After recovery and healthy birds were released back to their own migration routes for migrant species, while resident species were released within their original habitat. And mostly we selecting a vital importance to releasing. The releasing site is of the vital importance for the species in Jordan, and we select, for example, Dana Biosphere Reserve, that is the Jordan's largest nature reserve, and was selected for the release because it is provide the proper habitat and the protection. In addition of being most important habitat for vulture in Jordan and located on the main migration route in the world, named or called Rift Valley Red Sea Flyway. We using the releasing of bird to rise of awareness of the local community and Jordanian community to increase the commitment of natural conservation and to help us on conservation and to help us on our vision and mission for bird conservation and natural habitat conservation. So big awarenesses events organized for released raptors. And we using two events in spring and autumn, World Migratory Bird Day, for example, and EVAD, International Vulture Day, to implement this is big awarenesses events for rising awareness, and the local communities are participated with us on tagging birds and releasing the endangered birds, and they sign document for conservation of endangered bird conservation, and the commitment to help RSCN for nature to conserve the Jordanian natural habitats. A total of 138 raptors representing 27 species were brought to RSCN Rehabilitation Center during 1 year. most of them from acceptiforms and falconry forms and striforms. Hybrid falcons, 10 of them is hybrid falcons. The Briglen falcon was the raptor most often confiscated, followed by Saker falcon, and then the Lanner falcon. These confiscation were at ports of entry. Some birds had multiple problems requiring treatment. For example, one of steep eagle had aspergillosis caused by aspergillus and sore crop. One Lanner falcon had an injury to the foot and a clipped feather, and 3 others had coccidia. One Brigren suffered from malnutrition and sore crop, and another with a clipped feather and sore crib.
interesting. إذا فيك بس عشان التايمينج just
okay.
I'm looking at the time. If you can please move a little bit faster.
Okay. Interesting record from tagging birds, that's including confirm the breeding of, this is first confirming the breeding of sparrowhawk in Jordan. This is some example for Stone Kerlo home range survey and tagging with the satellite tracking in Jordan. This is a short video for releasing the Brigren falcon in Jordan, and the Brigren is ringed before the releasing. This is bird released in natural habitat. After recovery in Jordan and the rehabilitation center. Egyptian vulture releasing, this is, we have a good story with this bird, and this is bird provided us a main or most important data about the main threats on the migratory or on the endangered birds on the wintering sites. This is bird named Wisal because many organizations participating on conserving this bird and releasing this bird. This bird released in Dana Biosphere Reserve and moved directly to Iraq, and this is wintering and or spending the summer period in the Turkey and then migrate directly to Ethiopia. So for wintering in Ethiopia, and the transmitter signal indicate that the vulture is dead in after 1 year, and the ground visited to the site to investigate the cause of and identify the reason of the mortality. The investigation provided that the data about the Wisal that did because Wisal feeding on a goat carcass located with or laced with poison targeting hyenas. So this is providing the main threats in wintering area is the poisoning for endangered species. This is other example for Cineras vulture released in Dana Biosphere Reserve and directly moved to Saudi Arabia and spent the wintering time in Tabuk area. Lanner falcon is released in Dana Biosphere Reserve, and this is provide data because this is unknown species distribution. We after 500 days of releasing, a telephone call from falconer was received confirming that capture of this individual in Saudi Arabia in Medina province. in Saudi Arabia, nearly 850 kilometers away from release sites. So this is providing data about the distribution and movement of this bird. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohandas Tariq. Thank you for that. Indeed, conservation of certain species, as you know, is an integral part component of ecosystems management and our ecosystems as a whole, and the value they provide. So just looking at the time as well, I'd like to now introduce our final presenter for today, Dr. Sabah Al-Junaid, a professor at the Arabian Gulf University in Bahrain, who will present to us how remote sensing technologies in mapping Bahrain's marine habitat, which opens awareness and policy development and maintaining healthy ecosystems and restoring ocean biodiversity in the area. Over to you, Dr. Sabah.
Thank you. Is the presentation there? Okay. Can I start?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. أسعد الله صباحكم جميعا بكل الخير. أنا صباح الجنيد من جامعة الخليج العربي. بعرض أنا جزء من دراسة هي عبارة عن مشروع بحثي لرسم خرائط الموائل القاعية في المياه الضحلة حوالين مملكة البحرين، واللي استمرت خلال الفترة من 2015 إلى 2019 باستخدام بيانات الاستشعار عن بعد وبيانات المسح الحقلي لمنطقة صغيرة جدا لا تزيد عن درجة إحداثية واحدة من منطقة الخليج العربي، تقدر مساحتها بما يزيد عن 9000 كيلومتر مربع من مياه الخليج العربي، وتقدر ب90% من المساحة الكلية لمملكة البحرين، اللي بلغت مساحة أراضيها 784 كيلومتر. احنا كلنا نعرف ان المناطق الساحليه والبيئيه البحريه جدا جدا مهمه بالنسبه حق البحرين، تعتبر الموارد الاستراتيجيه الاكثر اهميه موجوده فيها، وتمثل عباره عن الثروه السمكيه، تمثل الشعاب المرجانيه، تمثل الاعشاب البحريه، الرماد اللي تستخدمها الدوله في كثير من مشاريعها، كذلك عندنا احنا المياه التي تستخدم في التحليه. تتغير هذه الموائل باستمرار وطبيعتها تتغير باستمرار وتخضع لكثير من الضغوط البشرية والطبيعية المستمرة، مما يؤثر عليه وتتدهور مع الوقت، تدهور في النوعيات، تدهور في الكميات، وفي حالة تدهور هذه الموائل تدهور معها جميع الكائنات الحية اللي تعيش فيها. هذا بالإضافة أن كثير هناك من الملوثات اللي موجودة في الخليج، ومن ضمنها دولة البحرين والمياه الإقليمية التي تتأتى من مصادر مختلفة، وكلنا عارفين المصادر اللي تأتي منها الملوثات في هذه الدول، أغلبها هي من صناعة النفط، من العمليات الصناعية، من الشحن، من المصادر ذات العلاقة بالاستخدامات الأرضية، كلها هذه تؤثر على البيئات البحرية بشكل واسع، مما يؤدي إلى تدمير كثير من هذه الموائل. تدمير الموائل يؤدي إلى تدمير حياة أو تقليل كميات ونوعيات الكائنات اللي موجودة فيها. الموضوع اللي احنا نتكلم عنه باستخدام بيانات الاستشعار عن بعد والبيانات المختلفة اللي هو ما يسمى بالموائل القاعية، وهي احنا نقصد فيها أي بيانات موجودة تحت الجسم المائي، ونستطيع أن نمثلها مكانيا لأنها هي موجودة في مكان معين، أي نحن نستطيع أن نرسمها من ضمن خرائط، وهذه الخرائط جدا جدا مهمة لأن ممكن أن احنا نستطيع من خلالها إدارة هذه الموائل والحفاظ على هذه الموارد والاهتمام فيها بشكل واسع. الوضع الحالي أن هذه حالتها وحدودها قاعدة تتغير بسبب الضغوط البشرية المتكاثفة، فتحتاج تحديث وتحتاج مراجعة وباستمرار. في كثير من الدول تراجع هذه الخرائط، خرائط الموائل البيئية وباستمرار وتحدث. ليش؟ لأن احنا أصلاً لو سألنا لماذا؟ لأن احنا عندنا جابس في التكنولوجيا التي تستخدم من فترات، كل الأشياء اللي عملناها من فترة ماضية حالياً نعيدها لأن التقنيات تغيرت، بيانات الاستشعار تغيرت، طرق المسح البحري تغيرت، وكذلك حتى تصنيف هذه البيئات بدأ يتغير لأنه يؤثر علينا ويؤثر على عملية إدارتنا لهذه المناطق. ممكن احنا تستخدم على حسب الدولة، على حسب إمكانياتها، تطورت طرق استخدام ومسح هذه البيانات، بدأت من مساحة السونار، مساحة البيانات اللي ممكن تكون عندنا أجهزة، عندنا قوارب، عندنا فيديوهات، عندنا تصوير جوي، عندنا كلها انضاف لها بيانات الصور، الجوية تقريبا ما تعطينا أشياء كثيرة في ذيك الفترة، بدأت تنضاف لها بيانات الاستشعار عن بعد والتقنيات المختلفة التي تترافق مع بيانات المسح الحقلي، وبدأت أنواع هذه البيانات تتطور حقيقة، والمساحات والدقة تتطور، مما يعني ان احنا نقدر ندقق من خلالها بيانات خرائط الموائل الطبيعية. لو جينا على البحرين حقيقة كانت هناك في مجموعة من الدراسات السابقة التي تكلمت ووثقت ماذا يوجد حوالين البيئات البحرية المحيطة بالمياه. هو النوع الأول اللي هو بدأ ضمن شركات معينة ودراسين محددين، أكثرهم شهروا عبارة عن دكتور ديفيد فودسون اللي بدأ من 85 ضمن مشروع اليونسكو مع اليونيب، كانوا يحاولون يرسمون المياه الإقليمية للخليج العربي في ذيك الفترة. فكان دكتور ديفيد مسؤول عن منطقة البحرين، وابتدأ بتجميع البيانات ورصد من المحطات الستيشنز البوينت الأساسية على مدى 2 سنين، وأنتج أول خريطة للموائل البحرية في ذيك الفترة. طورها في الفترة الأولى وفي الفترة الثانية استخدم بيانات الاستشعار عن بعد. هذه عبارة عن الخرائط الأولية اللي كانت مرسومة باليد، وإحنا وايد استخدمناها واستفادنا منها، ومن ثم وثقها باستخدام بيانات اللانست 5 اللي كانت إمكانيته شوي ضعيفة. هذه إحنا الخريطة طورناها وعدلناها حقيقة بأخذ الإذن من الدكتور ديفيد فودسون، وأنتجناها في مختبرات جامعة الخليج العربي، وأعطيناها نسخ حقيقي، أعطيناها جميع الخرائط اللي هو عملها يدويا، وإحنا حاولنا نعيدها له ونستفيد منها. المحاولات الثانية جات من خلال مركز البحرين للدراسات السابق، وهو عبارة عن مجموعة بدأت من 98 وانتهت في 2006 في محاولة الاستفادة بمسح المياه الإقليمية البحرينية. فجمعوا كثير من المعلومات والمسوحات وأنتجوا خريطة مشهورة والكل يستخدمها في 2006، واعتمدت على بيانات القمر الصناعي أستر ومعلوماته في ذيك الفترة. في الدراسة اللي احنا قمنا فيها حقيقة احنا مجموعة كبيرة، حاولنا نستفيد من جميع المعلومات السابقة، من كانت بيانات أو دراسات أو خرائط أو حتى بيانات إكسل شيت أو أي بيانات كانت في ذيك الفترة متوفرة، بالإضافة إلى ما تم استحداثه من بيانات استشعار عن بعد، وما تم استحداثه من تصنيف للبيانات هذه. حقيقة اللي ركزنا عليه عملية التصنيف وكيف تدار على مستوى العالم، واستفادنا من كثير من الكتب اللي تنتجها المؤسسات الدولية الإسكو واليونسكو وما شابه، بحيث أن احنا نطالع تجارب الدول الثانية في المناطق الدافئة وكيف تصنف، لأن تصنيف الموائل جدا صعب. فابتدينا احنا نعدل التصنيف، نحاول أن نعدل الفئات التصنيفية المطلوبة. اثنين، كان يتعامل ويانا حقيقة مجموعة من السكوبا دايفر أو القطاسين المتمرسين اللي أقلهم تجربة يعني كان بين 16 إلى 20 سنة، وأغلبهم يعني كانوا قطاسين على مستوى مملكة البحرين والمناطق القريبة، وهذين المجموعة ساعدونا كثير في عملية تحديد المناطق. فإحنا خذينا تقريبا من 3 إلى 6 شهور فقط في تحديد المناطق التي يجب جمع البيانات منها من خلال معرفتهم مع وجود بيولوجيين معنا في الجانب، فعلى أساس أن نحدد الجراوند تروثينج أو مناطق المسح الدقيقة تحت سطح الأرض حتى نستطيع أن نربطها ببيانات. استفدنا من البيانات القاعية لارتفاعات مساحات القاع تحت سطح العمود الماء لأن نحتاجها حق بعض التحليلات، ورسمنا من خلالها خريطة قاع البحر وارتفاعاته فوق المين سي ليفل اللي احنا بنسميه. ليش؟ لأن بعض الموائل تترافق على عمق وتوجد وتتركز على أعماق مختلفة، فعلى أساس نربط إذا كانت دقة التصنيف اللي عندنا كانت صحيحة ولا لا، فإحنا عملناها كإضافات، بجانب أن احنا استخدمنا أي بيانات إضافية واللي هي عبارة عن خرائط كل ما أنتجته البحرين. قسم المسح البحري عندهم خرائط كثيرة حق الشعاب المرجانية، حق المناطق البحرية، حق الارتفاعات، حق النقاط، جميع استخدمنا فيها. استخدمنا ما يزيد عن 100 فيديو صوروا مجموعة القطاسين، استخدمنا ما يقارب من 500 صورة جمعت خلال هذه الفترة، وكذلك استخدمنا تفاوت ما بين نطاقات الباندز أو يعني الضوء المرئي والأشعة القريبة على أساس نطالع الفروقات ما بين قاع البحر حتى يكون تصنيفنا بشكل صحيح. وآخر شيء اللي أضفناه ما أضافته الدراسات السابقة أن احنا بدأنا نستخدم خوارزميات وانديكيتر محددة تطورت في ذيك الفترة توضح العلاقة ما بين الأشعة الحمراء والأشعة القريبة على أساس نطالع مدى الدقة ونختار منها. ما نستطيع أن نستخدمها، بعضها لا تصلح للمياه الموجودة عندنا لأنها حق المياه النظيفة الصافية الشفافة. احنا مناطقنا تعرفون بسبب كثرة تجريف الرمال والعمليات هذه يصير المياه شوية فيها عكارة أو التربيديتي بشكل واسع، فاختارينا منها مجموعة نقدر نتعامل معها. وعلى ذي الأساس أوجدنا السلم اللي نريد عليه، اللي هو السلم يسمونه السلم التصنيفي، الذي يعني ساعدتنا في عملية التصوير المتواصل تقريبا من 2015 ل 2017 في أكثر من طلعة وليست طلعة واحدة. وقلنا أن احنا بنستخدم هذا التصنيف اللي يتناسب مع التصنيفات السابقة وما بنطلع منه، اللي هي عبارة عن الطحالب، الأعشاب البحرية، الشعاب المرجانية، الرمال، ومن ثم عندنا الصخور والمياه العميقة، والمياه العميقة اللي تترافق معها الرمال. وأنتجنا خرائط توضيحية لأنه ما يمكن أن احنا نرسم موئل واحد لحاله، فبدينا نحاول أن احنا نجمع ما بين أكثر الموائل ترافقا مع وجودها على قاع البحر. فرسمنا الشعب المرجاني مع الصخور، ورسمنا الطحالب اللي تترافق غالبا مع الأعشاب البحرية. رسمنا فرقنا ما بين وجود الرمال، خصوصا الرمال عبارة عن مورد تجاري حق البحرين أساسي، مهتمين وين مواقع بالضبط، اللي يتركز في الشمال ويتركز في المناطق اللي يسمونها اللي هي عبارة عن أساسيات وضحناها استفدنا منها باستخدام الباثيمتريك ماب اللي هي تتركز تقريبا في الحدود ما بين البحرين والسعودية. هذه عبارة عن الخريطة التصنيفية النهائية اللي طلعنا فيها. هي جدا مهمة الخرائط هذه. الخرائط يجب أن يستخدمها متخذ القرار من أجل تحديد المناطق التي يجب أن تكون تحت الحماية، وإذا يريد أنه يحدد مناطق محمية للمحافظة على هذه المناطق، خصوصا الأعشاب البحرية. وإحنا نعرف أن البحرين تعتبر أو الخليج العربي بشكل موئل حق ثاني أكبر قطيع بالنسبة حق فرس البحر، وهي تمر على البحرين من بعد ما تمر على جزء من مياه الخليج العربي وتتحرك على هذه المناطق وتلعب دور. فعلى ذي الأساس بشكل أساسي إحنا يجب أن نحافظ، لأنه مو فقط فرس البحر وإنما بقر البحر آسفة، ممكن وياه السلاحف، ممكن وياه كثير من الطيور. ذي الخرائط حقيقة جدا جدا مهمة وتلعب دور ان احنا نحدث من خلالها، حتى تستخدم في الاتفاقيات. حاليا احنا قاعدين نعمل ان احنا نعمل فيه بشكل اساسي على اساس عمليه تغير المناخ وليس فقط الرسم، لان الرسم يجب ان يكون لغرض محدد. هذه الخرائط تعد مهمه، ويجب ان كل من تطورت الاستشعار يجب ان احنا نتطور معها ونحاول ان نحدثها وباستمرار. يعني يجب انها تتغير لان هي اصلا موسميه. حاليا احنا نعمل لان المشروع مستمر. حاليا احنا خلصنا الجزء الثاني الساحلي، نقدر فيه من خلاله اللي هو عباره عن مساحات المنغروف او القرم وكميات الكربون اللي ممكن تستفيد منها البحرين ضمن اتفاقيات تغيير المناخ بالنسبه حق الكربون العضوي. في طور ان احنا نخلص ما يسمى بالكربون الازرق. حاليا عزلنا كل المناطق اللي فيها السيجرس او الحشائش البحريه، ونحاول ان نكمل المشروع مع بعض الاشياء ونقيس في كميه الحشائش البحريه في اكثر من موسم، لانها هي عباره عن موسميه، بحيث ان نقدر كيف تستفيد البحرين في المرحله القادمه من هذه الموائل وتحافظ عليها وتحدد مناطق للحفاظ عليها، لأنها بدأت تنحصر من الشمال وتنحصر جزئيا وتتركز في الجزء الشرقي الجنوبي الشرقي من مملكة البحرين فقط. أما المناطق الثانية فأصبحت وجودها جدا جدا قليل. شكرا لكم. أنا حاولت أن أسرع علشان الإخوان خذوا مساحة أكبر. شكرا، وإذا في أي استفسار ممكن تتواصلوني على الإيميل.
شكرا دكتورة صباح. شكرا على البرزنتيشن. Thank you for sharing how remote sensing and GIS data can really help in monitoring anthropogenic influences in areas around Bahrain, and how that can feed into national reporting and beyond in some cases. So thank you so much. I'd like to remind our participants that the chat box is open for if you have any questions to any of our panelists. And so please feel free to. I realize that in terms of timing, we're a little bit running a little bit over, but perhaps maybe we can kick off the conversation with a question to Ms. Di Zhang. My question to you really is does the UN Biodiversity Lab spatial map output is intuitive enough that it will enable non-GIS experts to build their analysis leveraging on the platform? But does it provide capacity building perhaps to non-governments to fully utilize the capability of the platform itself?
Thanks for your question. The answer is yes.
We're more than happy to provide capacity building to non-government organizations, local communities to help them fully use the resources on our platform. We have provided training activities to Brazil organizations earlier this year, and there are also a series training activities planned in October. We also launched a micro course on UNDP's Learning for Nature platform, where everyone can access the training course and play on some hands-on exercise to help guide you start using this platform. Our goal is to label everyone to harness the power of data and to equip policymakers to access powerful tools. UNBL works as the vehicle to achieve that. And please feel free to contact us if you or your organizations need any support on the training. We're happy to work out the best way to get you on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zhang. Perhaps I think one of the questions that something that is really interesting to me is, and I noticed perhaps in some of the presentations, particularly the one by Mohandas Tariq, is really the how you engage with communities and how to create the awareness when it comes to preservation and the protection of endangered species. So I just wanted to ask maybe Mohandas Tariq, if you can share with us perhaps some of the challenges maybe and some of the successes you've had in terms of engaging with communities in regards to that. Mohandas Tariq, are you with us? I think we've lost them. So then I'll maybe pass that same question to Mr. Hani, because you've shared with us, for example, the EMISC experience and the development of it. How engaged have communities been in terms of the development of this platform? Are they able to access it, and how you can engage these kind of maybe communities or national or local stakeholders perhaps in such tools that you have developed at a national level?
Yes, on the contribution of EMISC with the community, of course, through channels of the social networking, EPA has sites on all of them, and we share some of the data on whether it's public awareness data or engaging them with public awareness campaigns. And people have a fairly positive feedback for that. Some of them are interested to know the information that's available, but it's still it's an ongoing process because tackling development and conservation and trying to convince people with sustainable development is particularly tricky. Especially in our countries, because either we are in the state of building or rebuilding, especially in West Asia, I'm talking. So it's an ongoing process, yes, and the interest of the public is growing indeed. So yeah, this is the thing. And again, like I said, the Etna has been there for a few years now, and it's gaining more interest from people. So we're hoping for the future that everyone will be on board.
That's excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hani. And Dr. Sabah, just a question to you. You've been engaged in a lot of this remote sensing, GIS, data gathering, that sort of thing. What do you think are possibly some of the major challenges in working with the digital ecosystem in the conservation sector? Dr. Sabah, you're on mute. There you go. Oh, you're still muted. You're still muted, Dr. Sabah. We cannot hear you. There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
تريدين معرفة تأثير تطور دمج البيانات ولا أنا ما سمعت شيء؟ صح؟
يعني how what are some of the challenges يمكن in our region لما it comes to digital this digital ecosystem, looking at how for example remote sensing, GIS technologies, those sorts of things. شنو some of the challenges in working with that when it comes to conservation in our region?
ما في عندنا احنا هناك في كثير من الامور الصعبه في منطقتنا، بالعكس احنا مشكلتنا عمليه الشيرنج. عطاف الجهات الحكوميه تشتري كم هائل من البيانات، وحقيقه كثير من المؤسسات الدوليه حاليا توجد كثير من البيانات ممكن استخدامها احنا بدانا تدريس دي العلوم متاخر، في كثير من الجامعات بدأتها متاخر، ويجب ان هي تسارع الوقت من اجل ان هي توطن هذه العلوم. الكفاءات عندنا كثيرة، ولكن يعني نحتاج مختبرات أنها تعمل على توطين هذه العلوم، لأنها موجودة وأصبحت مفتوحة، وجوجل إيرث وجوجل إنجن وكل البيانات هذه أصبحت تستخدم في اتخاذ القرارات. في كثير من الدول بدأت، إحنا شوية متأخرين، بعض الدول بدأت يعني، ونحدث كل المنصات اللي بعض الناس أعطوا أمثلة عليه، لأنها أنا أشوف أن احنا ما نمتلك منصه، الكويت تمتلك منصه الايمسك، البيئه عندنا ما تمتلك منصه، الامارات، ولكن مشاركه البيانات هي عطاف هي اصعب مشكله في دول الخليج العربي. كل اللي يقولون ان نعطي ما يعطون. انا من تجربتي في التدريس في جامعه الخليج العربي مع كل الطلبه اللي وجدوا عندنا، قله من المؤسسات الحكوميه والخاصه في دولنا العربيه، في دولنا الخليجيه، ما بتكلم عن الدول العربيه، لا تعطي البيانات التي يستطيع الطالب ان يبدا فيها كانفورميشن وانه يفيد المؤسسات الدوليه. انا باعتقادي حاليا الطلبه بداوا يعرفون وين الاشياء موجوده وين مفتوحه، وبدات كثير من المنصات تنشر بياناتها، فما اصبح صعب، ولكن بدقه وريزوليوشن احنا نسميها. وان شاء الله الجاي افضل.
ان شاء الله اكيد الجاي افضل، واكيد يعني I think مع التطور اللي عم بيصير بالعالم and the changes we see particularly with COVID and what COVID has kind of pushed us, يمكن this pandemic has pushed us further in looking at what tools, what technologies, and we're holding an entire conference online, which is something maybe perhaps a couple of years ago maybe we would not have considered. So again, I really want to thank you for your time, everyone. I think the message is clear, and the message that we can probably take today is how these tools and how these how digital infrastructure in general is really useful in reducing the time that we need to perform biodiversity analysis, and that means that we can most probably respond to threats to ecosystems and biodiversity in a much more meaningful time frame, and how it's all interlinked and interconnected and towards achieving the goal of healthy and resilient ecosystems by 2030. So I really want to thank all the panelists with us today. Thank you, participants. I apologize if there were questions that we were unable to answer, but as my colleague Abdel Minam said, we will respond to those by email, and if there's anything, we're ready to answer. So thank you so much. That's it from me, and we wish you all a wonderful day, and good luck with the remaining sessions of the conference. Take care.
Thank you, Ataf. I believe I'm up next. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Mohammed Angawi. I am the Regional Climate Change Coordinator for UNEP Regional Office in West Asia, based in Manama. I'd like to welcome you all to this next session, which is entitled Tackling Climate Change. In the interest of time, I'll make the introduction brief. As you all know, West Asia region, like everywhere else in the world, is not immune to the impacts of climate change. Already we are seeing the effects on a day-to-day basis, and there's consensus that around the region, temperatures, like other parts of the world, will be going up in a already hot part of the world. Water scarcity will increase, precipitation patterns will change, and you will likely get more intense rainfall in an area where urban planning has suffered the kind of encroachment and expansion problems that have been witnessed in other developing parts of the world. droughts and floods, increased temperature, and unpredictable precipitation. These are all just some of the challenges we're facing, and they will intensify, of course, sea level rise and so on. West Asia is also varied in terms of infrastructure and housing stock, levels of resilience and capabilities at present. And so this session aims to see how digitization through in a climate change response can provide a means for transparency and a means for finding solutions to mitigate climate change and adapt to its impacts. I'm very pleased to have an extremely experience-rich and diverse set of panelists from academia, from industry, and from research. I think you will all benefit, and we're very pleased to have them here today. I'll introduce them one by one as their sessions begin. So first off, and without further ado, I will hand over to Mr. Nikola Milojevic-Dupont, who is a PhD researcher at the Mercator Resource Institute on Global Commons and Climate Change, and he'll be exploring opportunities for using artificial intelligence, deep learning, and neural networks in mitigating climate change and adapting to its consequences to a community of industry experts, academic, and policymakers globally. So, Nikola, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Mohammed, and good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. All right. So, oops. Yeah. So I am Nikola Milojevic-Dupont. I'm a PhD researcher based in Berlin at the Technical University and at the Mercator Global Research Institute on Global Commons and Climate Change, and I'm also a member of the NGO Climate Change AI, which I will mention later in this talk. And so, yeah, I'll be talking about how machine learning can be leveraged to help tackle climate change. So apologies here, I won't be providing some perspective specifically about the West Asia region, but more generic aspects which I hope can be useful. So I guess no need for me to further introduce climate change. That was very well introduced just before. There's going to be very soon severe and increasing effects in all across the world, including West Asia region. And so we pretty much know we need to get to about zero net greenhouse gas emission by 2050 to try to mitigate as much as possible this risk. And so, yeah, we need at the same time to come up with climate change mitigation to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emission that we are putting in the atmosphere, and also adaptation strategies to adapt to the risk that will very likely happen anyhow. And the question here is, how can artificial intelligence and other tech can play a role in this context? And so artificial intelligence here, so it's a pretty broad term, right? So it's pretty much any algorithm that can allow a computer to perform a certain task. We have been mostly looking at within this big box like machine learning, which are techniques that, broadly speaking, enable to automatically extract patterns from large amount of data. And these techniques have strengths and limitations. So strengths is that they are enabling to scale up various different tasks. They enable to optimize complex systems that are difficult to optimize manually. They enable to generate a lot of data, but they also have limitations that include that if you don't have proper data to train those systems, they don't work well. They also propagate different biases that come from data designer use, and yeah, and they also assume that things are constant. So if you're training a system, an AI system on some data, and things change, then the AI system doesn't know how to necessarily adapt. So with colleagues, we wrote a big review paper a couple of years ago that has been accepted now in the journal ACM Computer Surveys, and will soon come as a research paper. And yeah, and where we try to make a broad survey of the different applications of machine learning to tackle climate change across various application areas. And so in this short presentation, I don't have the time to go into all details, but we essentially found different recurring themes across application areas that includes, and so that where we believe that they have all strong, they all represent strong opportunities to tackle climate change. So one is gathering information that's needed, for example, for policy making. So, and then that we currently don't have, so on GHG emission, deforestation, infrastructure. Another big one is forecasting. So any kind of information, usually in the near future, that are very helpful to optimize systems. So for example, renewable energy generation, transportation demand, extreme weather events. Then we also have improving operational efficiency, predictive maintenance, accelerating scientific experimentation, and approximating time-intensive simulation. So again, these are like really themes that are recurring across different application areas, which are like all the different application areas across climate change mitigation. So the building sector, transportation sector, agricultural sector, and also aspects of climate change adaptation. So for example, resilient cities. Just going quickly into two examples here. So I mentioned forecasting. What you can do with forecasting, for example, is doing solar PV nowcasting. So this is the motivation here is that solar and wind, which are which enable the generation of renewable energy, vary a lot based on different factors such as weather. And so here there's a key application of machine learning to forecast the power production to help manage grid powers. And this can have a big impact on the carbon intensity of the electricity generation, because if you cannot forecast properly how much generation you have on the grid, you need to have backup generation, usually with other energy carriers that are usually more carbon intensive, like for example, coal. So if you can forecast better, then you can reduce this need for backup generation and then save some CO2 emissions. And so here, AI is really well suited to this kind of problems. For example, with time series algorithm that can learn patterns from different time of kind of historical data, for example, weather, and learn to better predict weather and to better predict what will be the solar and wind renewable energy generation. Another example is making optimization efficiency gains through optimizing HVAC systems, so the heating, ventilations, and cooling systems. So we're talking of buildings here. So within the energy use of buildings, this system usually account for really large chunks, like it can be up to more than 50%. And we know that for many of these systems, there are a lot of inefficiencies due to, in general, the fact that these systems are quite complex and that it's difficult to really monitor well all the possible inefficiencies. And here, yeah, this kind of operations, they are based on thermodynamics, user unpackage, equipment constraints, a lot of different factors, and that's also great application of AI here, because you can use, for example, reinforcement algorithm techniques to come up with automatic control strategies that learn how to more efficiently operate this complex system, which is particularly useful for large and complex buildings. So these were some examples of what of how machine learning and AI in general can be a rich tool of a set of tools to help mitigate adapt to climate change, but so I want to highlight some other consideration and caveats. So first, the different AI systems to be put into context. So many climate strategies don't need AI at all. Where AI is applicable, it will only be one part of the strategy. So there are always other important aspects. The impactful application may not be the most flashy ones. but often are operating on some background complex systems that people may not be seeing in their day-to-day life. AI is also not interestingly good or bad. There are also various applications that are negative for climate change. Then there are various deployment considerations. So sometimes there are simpler methods that work. In general, the simplest method will be that one can find will be the best. Sometimes is AI or it's not AI, or within AI there are more or less complicated methods, and the simpler the better. Then we have we always need to remind the Jevon paradox, which says that if you increase efficiency, you can have some rebound effects in so essentially more demand for certain services. So it's not because you improve efficiency that in the end you will reduce the climate impact of new technologies. Then equity of access concerns are very important. And then to enable an actual effective development, there are a lot of different stakeholders that are very key, in effective partnerships between the stakeholders are important. So this includes researchers, industry that will implement and scale the different technologies, and users, policymakers, and other affected parties. To also scale all these technologies at the scale that we need for climate impact, there are several bottlenecks. They are mostly about knowledge, infrastructure, and cross-pollination. So there's still a lot of lack of knowledge and understanding what is impactful and not impactful in terms of techniques and application, in terms of across all stakeholders. And there's still a big lack of infrastructure in terms of data, funding, and policy to facilitate this impactful work that goes from research all the way to development. And then, in terms of cross-pollination, there's the need for more networking and collaboration between all the different stakeholders. So that's what we're trying to do with Climate Change AI, which is, as I said, a volunteer organization that's trying to catalyze impactful work at the intersection of climate change and AI. So we're a global network of researchers, policymakers, and entrepreneurs, and we're trying to come up with a set of resources for people who want to work in this space. We provide advice. There are a lot of events. So please have a look at our different, so we have this newsletter, and we, you can look at our website and different presence on social media and etc. And that's it for me. Thanks a lot, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Nicola. Very interesting stuff. I think this is one of the first times I've encountered the link between artificial intelligence and climate change solutions. So I think listening to the other panelists that are coming up, finding linkages in what they're doing in terms of energy and modeling would be very interesting to explore. I'd like to hand it over now to our next panelist, Mr. Yanis Basiris, who will be presenting on how innovative smart systems can help in reducing energy consumption. I think now it will explore smart grid solutions and how they increase the capacity of grid-connected clean energy and promote energy savings in power systems. I think now with the COP26 just around the corner, the commitments on mitigation and reducing carbon emissions around the world, this couldn't come at a better time. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Yanis. Thank you.
Yes, hi, thank you very much for the introduction. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, it's starting now. But I think you're on note mode. So if you could give us the presentation mode, that would be great. Thank you.
Just a moment, please. Actually, I shared. Actually, I'm using two screens, and let me see if I can. I should share. Is this better?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry for this. Hi to all the attendees, and thanks very much for the invitation to participate. Of course, what we all know in that forum is that global warming is definitely a key risk to our whole existence as a species. What probably some of you don't know is that there are existing solutions, especially around energy management and conservation. We can not eliminate, of course, but ease the criticality of the problem. But unfortunately, they're not used enough. Of course, we heard also about the artificial intelligence and all this development that's happening, but even more mundane solution on the digital transformation sphere. I am Yanis Vesiris, and for all my career, I have been very passionate on software innovation and how you can actually utilize software to challenge the way that we're approaching difficult problems. Today, we will be discussing about how we use key performance indicators, so metrics, to automate energy management. My presentation will focus on three main things. Its complexity of existing applications, the vision, where the energy performance wants to go and where the solutions want to take the key performance indicators, and of course, the benefits that we have seen in this kind of applications so far. Of course, at the end of the presentation, I would like you to think of how you can contribute to energy efficiency by adopting innovation in your organization now. So let's start the presentation. And of course, just in general, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I mean, when we're talking about buildings of the future or assets of the future, there's specific things that we all have in mind. Of course, welcoming, memorable, everybody looking for that experience, a sense of pride and protection, protection being a big thing. Of course, make sure that there's a lot of thinking, innovation, a lot of rooms to disrupt, but also energize, work and energize. Health and wellness is creating a big, also, it's a big aspect of what we're trying to do. And of course, this has to do with the experience of the employee, the visitor, the facility operator. But now we're going into something which is probably a little bit more behind the scenes. And let's talk about energy sustainability, especially tackling climate change, and of course, operational efficiency. And I know that climate change is a big thing and a big challenge, as I said, but fortunately or unfortunately, we have to link it with energy management and savings of the operators of these assets so we can get faster adoption, especially in places where there's not the regulatory framework for implementing this solution. So now let's think about how we're working today and how our buildings are operating today and what is actually the challenge that we're facing. And I have to admit that the main challenge is that so many different kind of buildings with so many different kind of solutions or operating envelopes. And at the end of the day, we all know that they're all operating in a silo environment. Definitely, modern buildings get a lot of information, but probably they're all relying on manual controls in order to take actions. Think about probably temperatures in different rooms, or quality of air, or even fire, security. And at the end of the day, each of the operators, they're looking as an asset, as an island. And unfortunately, energy efficiency is not scalable enough to be implemented. The benefits are not enough to be implemented if you're looking at a building per building sometimes. And of course, when we're talking about enterprises, the complexity of the assets, the life cycle, the different process performance, the different occupant experiences, very difficult to measure and very difficult to actually understand how your actions affecting the experience and the energy conservation. Of course, this is where we are today, but of course there is a vision, and I don't want to, and the vision, maybe it's not complete, but definitely big chunks of it already there. Not only from my company, and of course, maybe I'm using some lingo that Hannibal is using, but they're equivalent solutions from different suppliers and different partners. And at the end of the day, when we're talking about the vision, we're talking about the whole experience, but also having, making sure that all the decisions we're taking are based on data. Now, and of course, automation is a big thing about it. So think about all the sensors or the assets that you have, the HVAC, which definitely consumes 50% of the energy, as rightly said in the previous presentation, but also external systems, medical systems, human resources, transport services, and connect all that experience into a cloud, in enterprise cloud, where now you can actually start facilitating and enabling different assets and different services. Mobility, instead of actually having operators who are only in front of a screen, they can be mobile and they can actually work from different assets. analyze and search. Of course, analytics is a big thing. You heard it, that data is the new oil. We're actually drowning in data, but we're starving for information, because data, unless are being aggregated and used in the right way, they cannot provide any. Of course, then you're going into alerts, notification, proactive maintenance, and not only reactive as we're currently doing it, but proactive maintenance of assets. And of course, needless to say, enterprise integration. Everything makes sense when you start talking about a lot of assets working together and communicating to each other and measured against each other to understand what is the maximum KPI, the maximum efficiency you can do. And then, of course, once you have all this information, all these different services, then you can talk about, the healthy of the building, the optimization of the building, the predictive maintenance of the building, or a predictive maintenance of an asset. So the vision is actually, and as you can see, although we have interactions with humans, mainly from input, the system has to be automated as possible in order to be self-sustained and self-operating. Now, the question is, has this been done before, and how does it look like? Yes, the whole vision probably takes more time, and linking now with digital transformation, and of course, everybody talks about digital twin, and just to, this is all lingo we're using, but eventually what you're trying to do is create a digital equivalent of your building or your asset, so you can actually understand proactively how it will react under different scenarios. And then once you start getting all this data, which nowadays it's easy, data acquisition and data analytics are very easy over the cloud in any kind of platform, Azure, AWS, then you can start understanding the levers to drive profitability. And again, you can always say, Yanis, why you're driving profit, why you're actually discussing profitability in a climate change model. But we all know profitability is going to be the main driver in order to change the way that we're treating energy, and this will have a direct effect on the way that we're saving for planet. And now you're going into the facility view, but think about it. We're talking about a regional view of assets and even a global view of different assets working together. And now we're saying CO view, but it can be also a policy set of view. It can be a governmental entity view. So now we have a very full detail of how the buildings, how our assets are operating, and how we have specific problems where we can actually go and rectify. Again, this is a vision, but this is actually 90% of the visions already here. And unfortunately, it's not catching up in our part of the world yet, for different reasons that we can discuss. I would like to hear also your opinions, but the data are there and the data don't lie. Whenever we have done this, the energy optimization, using the cloud-based, the closed loop, and the machine learning, which actually continuously optimizes the operation, the savings are huge. We're talking about different parts of the world based on temperatures, because not different. There are different, of course, challenges in Europe than in the Middle East, where I'm located, but the savings are always there, and they're ranging from 30% to down to 17% when the climate is a little bit more harsh, like what we have in the Middle East. And again, these savings are only with around 60 or 70% of the solution. And I can only imagine what's going to happen when we're actually expanding and we're going to the full vision of using KPIs to monitor energy efficiency. And with that, I would like to thank you. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you, Yanis. I think we've already received some questions on energy consumption, especially here in West Asia. So I'll get back to you. It's a very interesting topic, as you know. We are in a hot part of the world, and cooling requirements and water desalination and very, very energy intensive. So we'll get back to that in a moment. I would like to hand the floor to the next panelist, Dr. Shadi Abdullah, who is a research director at the National Council for Scientific Research in Lebanon, who will be presenting the SUNAR, the Sustainable Natural Resource Management Platform for Early Warning Systems, created by the Lebanese National Council for Scientific Research. And he will discuss its role in implementing proper prevention and preparedness on emergency operations, as well as in serving stakeholders and decision makers for disaster risk reduction. So if there was ever time for data and climate change, Dr. Shadi is one of the more knowledgeable people that we know we're very happy to have him. So please, Dr. Shadi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just let me share the presentation. Okay. So good morning, everybody. I'm Shadi Abdullah, coming from the National Council for Scientific Research. Today we'll be talking a little bit about our experience in the early warning system for the disaster risk reduction. As I said before, we are the scientific arm of the government, the National Council for Scientific Research. We have 4 centers, related centers, which is the Center for Remote Sensing, Center for Geophysics, the Marine Science Center, and the Lebanese Atomic Energy Commission, which are the 4 centers that deal with different types of research, from early warning system to the CBRN to the marine sciences, and of course the tectonic and other type of disaster risks. Actually, in forecast monitoring, hazard has been recognized in the Sendai framework in 2015, and understanding, and it was in the first 2 priorities, which is understanding disaster risk and strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk. Taking this into account, into the fact, together with the stressing the need for capacity building and disaster risk mapping and management, and to scientifically assess the disaster risk management unit at the Presidency of Council, we initiated in 2015 what is called the Sustainable Natural Resource Management Platform and Early Warning Systems. Of course, we are sharing in Lebanon, we are sharing the visions, the same visions, with the DRM unit for the resilience, enhancing and reducing vulnerabilities, and maintaining development objectives. Of course, when we talk about these 3 agendas, we have something always in common, and this is most of the people asking, what is the common between the 3 agendas, the climatic change, the sustainable development, and the Sendai framework? And we can say from this graph, as you can see here, which is reducing vulnerability and enhancing resilience. Accordingly, in our SONAR platform, which is allocated at the National Council for Scientific Research, we have a huge database that we have been working at since like 30 years. Everything is digitally transformed. We are, of course, using the remote sensing information from satellite imageries, either in a near real-time data through, of course, through stations which are located at the CNRS, or through the different data pools. Also, we are using in situ measurement, some of which are related to the snow, others are related like the bound ratio, equipments for the evapotranspiration. We are connected directly to the disaster risk management unit at the Presidency of Council, as I said. During any crisis, this is the place where you know, the Prime Minister or the minister who's in charge or taking the lead of the activities during the disasters, he sits here, and all the ministries around. This is the backup technical support, which we are leading in the SONAR platform. As you can see here, this is the platform displayed in the room, and we give the advice for the decision making during the crisis based on our modules, on our research, on the forecasting that we are doing, and I will be talking about in a little bit. Of course, these are also connected to the active stakeholders in different ministries and at the governmental level. And we have like these tools, the toys, I would like to talk about them because these are part of our work for dissemination. As you can see, like the crowdsourcing, the collectors, now we are working a little bit on the crowdsourcing and getting the information. As I said, we are dealing with the early warning system, and to have an early warning system, there are main elements that we should consider. One of which is understanding the risk a proper early warning system, a proper communication and dissemination rule, and of course, all of these should lead to a response capacity. Of course, as a researchers, we have to deal with the first three because this is our mandate, as I said, as a scientific arm of the government, related to understanding the risks and the hazards in terms of climatic change, in terms of natural hazards and others. We have been releasing a lot of studies and reports in this regard since 2015, from flood hazard assessment to the critical infrastructure assessment in the country, and also for the vulnerability and risk assessment to facilitate planning for disaster risk reduction and climatic change adaptation at the agricultural sector in Lebanon. Now we are putting a strategy for the DRR and the climatic change for the Lebanese government at the, at the agricultural sector. Of course, if you want to talk a little bit, I will just highlight few study cases that we are working on it. One of which is the forest fire. We are using satellite imageries. We are updating the vegetation cover on a yearly basis. We have a fire potentiality map, which is also updated on a yearly basis and has a relation with the socioeconomic and the vulnerabilities of the community, as well defining new fire danger index and the forest fire propagators. As you will see here, these are the models that we are and the indices that we are taking on a daily basis from the satellite imageries. We do the analysis, the observation in the last 24 hours. We do the nowcast, and then we give the forecast for the 72 hours. Some of these parameters is updated through the satellite imageries every 6 or 3 hours, and this is very important. And I will just give a case when we had the forest fire in 2020 and 2019, in the last 2 years. Of course, we release on a daily basis, after modeling these, we release a bulletin. This bulletin will give you the information about the status of the potentiality of having a forest fire in each and every village, and what are the precautions and the action it should be taken if your village or the place that you are living in is in a high danger area. As you can see here, this is how it's released on a daily basis with each and every village. This is during the 9th of October into 2020, where we had the big fires. And as you can see here, these are the areas that really were on fire. And we are like coupling between the the forecasting and what happened in the same day of our forecast. We are releasing this, as I told you, we need to have a dissemination tool. We are releasing on a daily basis a token that is sent to the Ministry of Interior Affairs, which is responsible on all municipalities. It's responsible, the ministry is responsible on the civil defense. They are sending this information through applications on the phone to the mayors, to the people that are responsible for forest fire fighting, informing them on a daily basis what will be the situation of danger of forest fire in the next 72 hours. As you can see here, these are the information that is transformed on a daily basis. For the people working on a civil defense, we have the forest fire propagator, and as you can see here, just giving the date, giving the location, the wind speed, and the direction, and we will give how the fire will be propagating in the next 72, in the next few hours. We are monitoring landslides also through satellite imageries, through the radar interferometry. For those who know the radar interferometry would know what I'm talking about. We also have other toys and tools, which are the drones and the geophones and other equipment that are deployed on the ground during any crisis. This is one of the major landslides in the country that took place. We were monitoring this through the drones, as you can see here. And after like a few missions, we realized and we were able to get the information about the subsidence of the area, which was around 60 centimeters in 2 years. And also we give our recommendations to the government in order to demolish a few houses, and this is what was taken into consideration. We use the satellite imageries and the forecasting in order to forecast for the to do forecasting for the floods. We run the probabilistic models and the deterministic models and different indices in order to get the information. We have modules, and we have modeled like the the flood risk and hazard. So within a click of mouse, with the tools that we have, with the new satellite observation in a near real time, we can assume, or we can give to the decision maker in a near real time during a flood, how much of the area is damaged, and what is the what do you call it, the damages in dollars or in for the area that was flooded within, I told you, within a click of a mouse. Also, we experienced a lot of flash floods in the country. This is in 2008, as you can see, 2018. I can share with you here another success story, because at that time, the government, the Lebanese government, the prime minister asked us in order to assess what was going on there and why did we have this flash floods, and because there were damages, there was some fatalities, and we went there with the drone. We run a high resolution image processing. This is the aerial photogrammetry at this, I think it was at the 7 centimeter resolution. So you can imagine how much of information that we have at that time in order to properly model the floods and the frequency of occurrence, and where will the floods be expanding, and what are the recommendations. Of course, this is the result of the flooding and how the water will be passing of a flood of 100, 200 years if we took the proper recommendation. And we also went to a further step where we were able to model the time for safety, so to the safety zone, I mean. So we recommended to put some signs in the area if we have a flood of 100 or 50 years of frequency. Where should the people, and what is the time required if anyone will be standing in a certain area, how much time he will need to the safety zones with the direction to the safety zones. Of course, this recommendation was taken to each and every ministry, and they were mandated on it to act with different aspects, talking from like erasing the bridges that were like inducing the floods, to put retaining walls, to work with the Ministry of Agriculture also to induce or to start with a proper management of the area, and to use the planting and other things in that area. We are monitoring also the dust storms, floods. Yes. Yeah, I'm finalizing. The droughts, as you can see here, this is one of the Karaun Lake in Lebanon, and we are analyzing also the hazards and the damages at the agricultural sector. This is one of we put also the DRR, or the disaster calendar, for the agricultural sector, the schools, the infrastructure. We are able to put the impact on the earthquake or on each and every different hazards, also for the sea level rise. As you can see here, this we finalized our field just before the 2 days before the Beirut explosion, and as you can see here, this is our modeling for the sea level rise. During the pandemic, we helped the government in order to put the dashboards and to take the information about the areas, the hospitals, the occupancy of the hospitals, the needs of each and every hospital, and it was like a live dashboard. So we were updating this every 2 hours. And last but not least, I'm showing to you, this is the forest fire dashboard that we took the SAG achievement, the special achievement in GIS by the Esri company this year for the performance and the full performance of disseminating the information in a proper time for the forest fire. I would like to thank you and sorry for being late. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shadi. We really appreciate that extremely informative presentation. I'm sure we have plenty of questions on it. I'd like to give the floor to the last but definitely not least panelist, Mr. Mohammed Ayoub, who is the Regional Growth Leader for GE Grid Solutions. He'll be presenting Smarter Means Smaller, how Internet of Things has squeezed the power grid into the palm of our hands. So without further ado, Mr. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Sure. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, it's starting now.
All right. Okay. So first of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thanks, Mohammed, for the great session so far, and definitely very informative information from all the previous presenters, indeed. And I think the time is a challenge. As Dr. Shadi was passing through, I think it's all really good information that we have to go through.
Mr. Mohammed, I think if I'm not mistaken, nothing is appearing on the screen yet, actually.
All right. So
if you can try again.
Can you see it now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. No worries. So I just wanted, before we start, to thank UNEP for this great opportunity to participate and to give certain views and our opinions of the impact of digitalizing the grid, the energy sector, and the grid specifically, to enable more sustainable growth for the Mother Earth. And as you mentioned in your introduction, I think it's not about leaving legacy; it's about living today. We've seen the impact of climate change in an increase in the floods, in the fires, and in everything around us, and it's not anymore a legacy that we leave for our kids and for the next generations. And if we want to ensure that we are matching with the challenges that we're facing when it comes to climate change, I think we need to start acting right now. So with that, and without due delay, I'll just jump into what is really happening within the energy sector. Starting with, I think the energy sector is contributing around 25 to 30% of the global CO2 emissions and the greenhouse emissions across the globe. And it's one of the main sectors that if we manage to ensure that we transit from the fossil fuel generation to a more renewable and more decarbonized solutions for generating electricity, it will play a major role in ensuring that we ensure a sustainable future for the next generations and for ourselves. So to start with, what's really happening in our industry? The electrical or the electricity industry has been in a status quo for the past 100 years. And in the last, I would say, couple of decades, we've seen tremendous transition that's undergoing within the electricity industry in general and the energy industry in general. And there are four main trends that we could see and spot in the energy industry throughout those past years, and we see that those will continue growing in the future. The first one is decarbonization. It's not only as a result of the legislation and the requirement to reduce the carbons, but we've seen a decarbonization campaign that's going on, retiring the fossil fuel assets and going to solar, wind, and other renewable sources that are lower in the carbon footprint is started, and it will continue. And that's back to what I was saying, it's not only a result of the policies and the regulations, but it's becoming a more feasible solution to generate electricity, with breaking through levelized cost of energy for solar that we've achieved at 1.6 cents, US cents per kilowatt hour. So we see that this will continue as well in the future. Another trend that we see in the market is the electrification. Electricity is becoming the backbone of our modern life, and it will continue its importance in the future. And it's not only servicing what has been traditionally serviced with electrical sources, but we see whole new industries moving towards electrification, including transportation with the EVs and potentially electric planes. The third aspect is decentralization. And we've seen that the traditional generation, transmission, distribution scene is really revamping. It's not anymore, you know, a unidirectional way of getting the electricity from, you know, large generation plants into the loads. And we believe that this will continue with the introduction of solar, with the introduction of geographically limited distributed energy sources. Now, those three trends are essential to continue to advance within the electrical scene. And to enable those, we need digitalization. So digitalization is not only a trend, it's a result that would enable us to have better decentralization, electrification, and decarbonization. So that's what's going in the market. However, if we go back to history, we have been on, like, we've been using digital technologies in the grid since the beginning, I would say, and it has been there in silos, and that was the traditional data silos that we were having. And as I was explaining, we did the best of what we could do in these different silos. The silos were not only in terms of generation, transmission, and distribution, but also between operation and maintenance and planning, as well as management. So the traditional data silos that we created were working, fitting for the purpose as they were, but they're not ready to capture and meet the trends or the changes that we're seeing in the electrical scene. And this is the second side, or as you could see on the right-hand side, the optimized data sharing source is enabling each of these silos to start speaking together and get insights from one silo to another to have a better optimization of data between the various functions, between the various areas, as well as between the various departments within any given utility. The structure itself is moving from being a unidirectional flow of energy towards becoming multi-directional flow of energy. Traditionally, we were designing the capacity of the grid based on that unidirectional, and that's where we kept lots of margins. When we were establishing our grids, we had lots of margins, design margins that we need to leave, and with a more optimized data sharing structure, this can be optimized in a way that will enable us to reduce the amount of capex that we require in building our grids. So the shift that is happening today in the digital transformation of energy, of the energy scene, is not really introducing digital technologies, but it's breaking the silos walls between the different silos that we are having within the energy scene. Actually, GE has figured this out, and that's why our structure as a company has been really emphasizing on putting the grid solutions business, which is the business that I am working in, as part of the GE Renewable Energy. And this is for one simple fact: 60% of the future investments that would happen in the future would be to add or retire fossil fuels and add renewable energy sources. And the idea is to place the grid solutions, which will be the glue that would ensure that you're adding those renewable energy sources into your existing grids in a safe, reliable way to ensure that you're having better forecast, better optimization, and better data access to your grid. So with that, the solutions that we are providing are to ensure that we're matching with this, whether it's new substations, whether it's services, whether it's, you know, certain solutions to ensure that we are offloading a huge amount of power from remote areas into closer areas through HVDC technologies or FACTS or DRPCs. So the setup of the offerings that we're having is designed to move forward. And I wanted just to mention two ways or two different solutions that we have had as part of this digital transformation plan that we're having. The first one is the digital substation. Digital substation is basically enabling us to access the data at their source. And the beauty of accessing data at their source is that it will give us a better overview and the dynamic version of the grid that will enable us to plan a better performing grids, and it will enable us to add more solar to it. Currently, there are lots of countries that are facing huge issues to enable more renewable energy to be added to their grid. And the main issue that they're having is that they're not able to forecast, they're not able to read and integrate the information that they're getting from either solar, from their transformers, from their assets, as well as the health of their assets directly into the operational mode of managing the grid that they're having. By offering digital substations, you're enabling the information to come directly from the source and enabling the control to go directly to the source. And this will enable the utilities to have better view of managing any additional of renewable energy to their grid safely and reliably, and ensure that any targets that's given by any country to add the renewable percentage out of their generation mix can be achieved safely and reliably. So this is one solution, which is digital substation. The second solution is the ALM. ALM is the asset life management portfolio. And just to give you why we're talking and we're emphasizing on this, most of the assets that we're having currently in our grids are either underutilized or they are overutilized. So you're not really loading your assets with the right amount of electricity. You're not getting the best of your assets, and in many situations, you're overloading your assets and forcing them to go out of service and impact your grid reliability. The ALM solution that we're providing for utilities is to ensure that they are having a better view of their assets performance and integrate the asset performance status to be part of their not only maintenance strategies, but also to ensure that it is having a say on the operational aspects of how the grid is loaded, what are the set points that you need to put at different assets within your grid. Now, frankly speaking, digitalization has been a journey and it will continue. And the more that we are implementing solutions, we're gaining more confidence and more value add towards towards all stakeholders within the energy mix. In GE, we have more than 100 different examples of implementing digital substations or APM across the region. And the results that we're getting with our customers, Mohammed, is really amazing. We were having a reduction on failure rates by almost 80% just by understanding the health of the assets that you're having in the network. And we were able to enable adding much more a percentage of renewable energy to the grid by ensuring that we are having the information provided at the right level and at the main components of the grid itself. My last takeaway on the presentation, I know that the time is running, is that the journey needs to continue. And back to what the previous presenters were talking about, implementing AI, machine learning, or even machine telling technologies is a result of the experiences that we get by implementing more digital solutions within our grids. And it is a mutual journey of learning for all OEMs, utilities, end user, and the stakeholders. With that, I'll give it back to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Mohammed. It was a pleasure hearing about how these technologies can really help operators and producers reduce their failure rates and really improve their efficiency, which ultimately contributes to our fight against wastage, which will have GHG emissions consequences as well. So it all falls into the fight against climate change. We have a few minutes, and thank you all for thank you all panelists again for their wonderful presentations. We have a few minutes remaining for questions, and we've already received quite a few. So I'll jump right into it and just ask our panelists in their responses if they can keep them brief to a minute or so, simply to allow for us to move on to the next session. And if we don't get to your questions to the audience, we'll try our best to hand the questions over by email and get the responses there. So jumping back to Nicola, we've seen AI help decision makers in various fields. So, for example, in diagnostics for medical practitioners, looking at medical imaging that can help produce very accurate results in terms of diagnoses. But we have a question from Professor Wafa Amir asking how AI can facilitate the response of decision makers in the response to climate change. So you may be looking at government officials, municipal level officials, in helping the decision-making process, not to solve a solution, but to maybe to inform and to help that process. Can you give us an example, or do you think we're still way off from that, talking about the enormity of the data challenge we have today? Sure.
So this is actually exactly the sort of space where I'm personally doing my research in the field of buildings. And so actually AI, so I'm using AI to generate more data about the building stock that enables to have like proper maps of complete cities, regions, and countries where you can have a view on the current state of the building stock, which is very important for various policy relevant questions that have to do both with adaptation and mitigation. So for adaptation, you want to know where the buildings are at risk of certain natural events. I'm working more on mitigation, and here the question is essentially how can we decarbonize energy use in the building sector? So we need to figure out which are the buildings that you need to retrofit first because they are the least energy efficient. And for that, you essentially need to have an overview on the building stock, right? So you need to know which building are where, what kind of buildings you have. Are these residential building, commercial buildings, new building, old buildings, etc. So we're using AI here really for data generation, so to provide more data faster, cheaper, to have an overview on the building stock, so that then with this information, policymakers can make informed decisions. Thank you very much, Nicola. And maybe a question for Dr. Shadi, relating to one of the questions from the audience. And this goes back to mandate. Nicola was talking about informing decision makers, and you mentioned in your presentation the importance of the mandate to change physical infrastructure around a municipality or a region, or to take decisions in terms of planning. How important has that been in, for example, preventing damage from forest fires? How important has it been in your early warning systems? And do you think that a voluntary approach may have a similar kind of impact, or do you think there's really a gulf in those two approaches?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, we have like different lessons learned in Lebanon, and unfortunately, I can tell you like it depends on the politics and the policies that are around. I give you, for instance, it is a must to have what you call a mandate for the scientific institutes and the people that, and for the early warning system that commit the people and the decision making to take into consideration what is released through these systems through the science. We had, as I told you, like 2 success stories, one in the forest fire, the other in the for the flooding. But in some instances, we failed, like in the last Beirut explosion. So even we and the DRM unit, we were trained for such a catastrophe. But one of a sudden, the head of the people that are taking decisions, they took a decision to give to handle everything to the army. And this was, for us, it was a failure, because there were many gaps that have been undertaken during the Beirut explosion to follow up with the people and to talk with the people, and even with the humanitarian agencies. There was a block in order to communicate with the army. So it is up and down. Surely it should have you should have a mandate for these institutes, and this mandate it should be covered with the rules and the regulations. Regarding the volunteers, we have really good examples in Lebanon, especially for the forest fires. We have been training like people, and the NGOs, they were training NGOs as an early responders in in remote villages, in areas where the civil defense cannot reach in the real time. So people, they were trained, they were being given some equipment. Now we are using all the artificial intelligence, all these small tools and communication tools in order to get their response back if we have like an incident in an area, so they can report it as early as possible, and they can intervene before the government or the people that are related or mandated in order to defeat the fires. So it's I believe voluntary work can help a lot in such cases.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shadi. I think the experience in Lebanon can would do well if it was replicated around the region, and I know there have been efforts, at least in West Asia, to look at early warning systems. So hopefully we can watch that space. Going to a question maybe to Yanis and to Mohammed. Yanis, you mentioned in your presentation that there are some obstacles in deploying the solutions you're talking about here in West Asia. Does that have to do potentially with the difficulty in retrofitting, or is it a matter of capital investment, or is it again regulation and mandate to apply these kind of digital solutions? And how do you see that going forward here in the region? So this is a question for both Mohammed and Yanis. Yanis, we'll start with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And to be honest, it was all these things that you mentioned. Definitely, the solutions are not so easily to be deployed, but definitely the disruption and the innovation will sort this problem out as more solutions are getting implemented, and we're learning from that. The second is that definitely the payment and the payback payment, it is many years, especially when we see that sometimes electricity is heavily subsidized by the governments. So there's not a lot of benefits, and the ROI is tending to be 5 to 10 years, which actually makes the decision slower. And of course, there is no legislation or even a reward system for this kind of initiatives. So I think all these three go together and with slowing down the pace of implementation.
Thank you. Mohammed?
Yeah, I think, Mohammed, there are three things that we need to look at, right? Technology readiness, policies availability, and willingness from developers and users to implement the solutions. From a technology readiness, I was just showing you a couple of examples of different applications that are there. Nicolas was talking about AI, machine learning. So the technology is there. We do have technological advancements that would enable us to pave the way for a better digitalization and utilization of digitalization within the industry. I think what we're really lacking is the policies in the region. The policies in the region are still traditional in the way that they're thinking, and frankly speaking, because the customer or the main stakeholders in the energy sector are utilities, and it's usually very sensitive to change stuff because their main focus is reliability and they don't want to take any risk. However, there are really shining examples across the way that we've seen utilities are moving towards implementing digital technologies and ensuring that they're creating virtual replica or virtual twin of their grids and enable more and more digitalization to take action in the manual way that they're operating their grids. And I would like just to probably highlight one point about the payback. I think the payback is heavily associated when it comes to the people, right? To the people. I agree with Yanis. It might take time because of the subsidization of the electricity and others, but for the utilities, the payback is incredibly high. I'll just point out at one example with a utility in the GCC countries where they had their payback for an investment in APM solution within 1.2 years. You can imagine. So implementing the solution, measuring the profits that they're getting, and they're getting back their money in less than 2 years. And then afterwards, it's pure profit for those guys. I think the look forward and the plan is to ensure that everyone takes one step ahead, ensure that he is increasing the risk-taking appetite that they have, but the profit that that we will get as people working in this industry, as utilities, as all of the stakeholders, even the end user, it will be definitely big, and the limit is the sky, as they say. We never know what would the technology and integrating the digital aspects of the grid, where it will take us. And I think it's an ongoing journey. There are good examples, good spotlights that we've seen in the past, but this definitely needs to continue.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. I think we're pretty much out of time, and apologies if we haven't gotten to your question specifically. We'll do our best to address that separately. Finally, I'd just like to thank all our panelists, Nicola, Yanis, Mohammed, and Dr. Shadi, for providing a wealth of information. It's quite obvious that digital transformation in the fight against climate change, whether it's mitigation or adaptation, supporting decision-making, profitability of private business, it all covers it. And it would be a shame not to explore this further, and I think UNEP stands ready to explore this with our stakeholders in the region. So again, a very warm thank you once again for our panelists, and we hope to see you again in the future. Over to the next presenter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that last panel. We're moving now into the final conversation. And let me just say, how inspiring it has been over the last 2 days to go from that kind of macro level, what's at stake at that global level, and actually take this conversation right down to the operational level. It's been so great to look at all these examples of digital technology and climate action and nature action and pollution action, and really learn from all the experts out there that are doing such amazing work. And one of the themes that keeps coming up over and over and over again is this call for more public-private partnerships and these coalitions of the willing, right? How do we take these big visions and actually operationalize them into these coalitions? And so that's what we're going to spend the final hour looking at today. This session is entitled Digital Coalitions for Collective Impact. And this is all about now translating this big ambition into real commitments and collaboration from all stakeholders, trying to make use of the best scientific analysis and technical innovations to really begin to accelerate actions at the speed, scale, and impact we need. So we're going to talk about 4 different coalitions that are already existing. We're going to learn from some of their lessons learned. What are they trying to do? How are they knitting together public and private actors and civil society together? And what are the key lessons learned for the West Asian region? So we're going to kick this off now with an opening presentation from Dr. Dietrich van der Weken. He's, the general manager for GSTIC in Dubai. And the presentation is going to focus on the global sustainability technology innovation community. So the floor is yours, Dr. Dietrich.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Dietrich van der Weken, and I'm heading the GSTIC team within VITO. So VITO is a technological research institute based in Belgium. So I'm actually not based in Dubai or in the West Asia region, but I'm leading a global community that focuses on sustainable technology and innovation. So I'm very pleased to be here and to tell you a bit more about our mission and how we operate. So what is GSTIC? GSTIC stands for the Global Sustainable Technology and Innovation Community and was launched in 2016 by VITO. And it's a rapidly growing, action-oriented global expert community that aims at upscaling the deployment of market-ready technological solutions that can impact the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which as you know, are 17 ambitious goals to move the world to a more sustainable future by 2030. Now, our goal is to support the different technology facilitation mechanisms within and outside the United Nations. And Most of these multilateral processes are dealing with three key elements: finance, technology development and transfer, and capacity building. And with GSTIC, we are clearly focusing on the technology part. And the two major processes we are focusing on are the technology facilitation mechanisms within UNFCCC and the Agenda 2030 for sustainable development and its associated SDGs.
Dietrich, well, before you go on, Dietrich, can you just maximize your screen, please?
Okay, let me try to do that. Just one moment, because there is a small issue with my Zoom here. Just a minute. Let me see where. I can't go in presentation mode for some reason. So if you don't mind, is this better or?
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's
okay.
That's better. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I was saying is the key question we try to address is actually what are the new and existing technologies and solutions that are needed to achieve the SDGs and the climate change goals? Because we saw, or there seems to be a lack of awareness of what technologies already exist, what makes them successful, and how can they be upscaled. So there seems to be a gap between the best available technology and what is already implemented at scale on the ground. So GSTIC is set up to credibly contribute to the international, regional, and national policy processes in the field of technological innovation and sustainable development. And therefore, it's impartial and independent from any particular commercial or promotional interest. And for this reason, GSTIC is hosted solely by independent nonprofit research organizations, of which FITO is one of them, but we've gathered a few other, for the moment, 7 in total from Brazil, from India, China, and 2 in Africa as well, from Nigeria and South Africa. So we are not in the business of promoting any individual technology, research result, or technological innovation, but we try to identify in an independent manner which technologies that can help the global community to reach the SDGs. And we highlight the policy changes that are needed to bring these technological solutions to the market at scale. Now, knowing that cooperation will be key to achieve the SDGs, we continually strive to expand our ecosystem of partnerships with government organizations, research organizations, individual companies, industrial associations, civil society, and academia, etc. And we provide all stakeholders with a forum or platform, online and offline. And the whole idea is to build a global community with like-minded organizations to identify, discuss, and showcase the impact of technology on the achievement of the SDGs. And in particular, we are focusing on 3 key elements. So as I said, identifying solutions, but secondly, also raising awareness of these solutions in the different sectors of society. And thirdly, we try to identify the key elements of the enabling environment that are needed for upscaling. So highlighting policy changes or that are needed to bring these technological solutions to the market at scale. We all know that technology in itself will not bring the solution. There are also changes needed in economic, financial, and social environments, as well as changes in human perception, behavior, and consumption preferences. So looking at technological innovation from different angles, that is what GSTIC is all about. It goes far beyond examining technologies. We are also looking into the environmental, societal, and whole of government changes that are needed for the transition to a sustainable society. On this slide, you can see the different thematic clusters. Each of these clusters is managed by a dedicated team, and most of these clusters are covered during the yearly GSTIC conference, where we have a dedicated program within each of these clusters. This slide gives an overview of the past 4 years. So our first conference took place in 2017, where we reached around 1,000 people from 80 different countries. Last year, we reached 3,700 people from 140 different countries. Now, just a few of the key findings, just to give you an idea of what typically comes out of such a conference or gathering. A few points that came out of the previous conference is that, from the pandemic, we learned that science, technology, and innovation already play a fundamental role in identifying and preventing damage and controlling a global health crisis. But the pandemic also presents a unique opportunity to rethink the way we operate business as usual and to come up with better solutions to the problems in the world today, using STI as a catalyst for this transformation progress. So what COVID-19 also taught us is that we are all in this together, and that the pandemic and other global health crises can only be controlled through a global collective effort of international organizations, governments, science and technology communities, and the private sector and civil society. So this is just a few of the key findings that came out. All of the findings are collected in a chairperson summary that is available on our website, also from the previous conferences. And to just as a final point, I would like to warmly invite you to attend the 5th GSTIC conference. We are organizing during the World Expo in Dubai, where we will again focus on breakthrough technological solutions for the SDGs. It's a special year for us because it's our 5th anniversary, and the conference will take place for the first time outside of Belgium. There was already a longer time a growing demand to set up regional GSTIC activities in different regions of the world. And we are strongly convinced that the upcoming World Expo in Dubai offers a great opportunity to further expand our global reach. And our objectives perfectly match with the sustainability pillar of Expo, focusing on innovative global projects that provide real-life solutions to help preserve the planet for future generations. So I hope to meet you all, either in person in Dubai, or you can also join us online. Just go to the website www.gstic.org and you will find all the information there. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dietrich. A fantastic initiative. And as you say, technology is obviously fantastic, but it won't scale at the speed we need unless it's enabled by the right policy environment. So it's great that you're actually looking at that in a very systematic way. I'm sure you will generate a lot of questions, in terms of the impact and some more examples. But before we turn to the questions, we're going to go through the other panelists first, and then we'll have our Q&A. So thank you very much, Dietrich. We'll now move across to the second presentation by Samia Melham, the global lead on digital capabilities with the digital development practice of the World Bank. Ms. Samia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Very happy and honored to be with all of you. Sadly, not in person, but virtually. It's really early morning, my time here, pretty dark. So I'm going to talk today about an aspect that is really inherent to everything that was said before by the speakers, that of digital capabilities to be able to build this digital society that we've been talking about and digitization of all sectors, whether this is energy, health, education, etc. And COVID has shown to us how important digital is. All speakers said it before me. However, the ability to pivot to digital, the ability for governments and private sector to work remotely and to deliver services online has been very uneven across all countries, across all companies. And this is what we coin as digital capabilities. So I'd like to present to you very briefly the result of a recent research and then reflect perhaps collectively on how to embed these digital capabilities in the MENA region, both public and private sector, especially where we are lacking behind. So let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we see you. Please go ahead.
Can you see the screen?
We can see it. We just need to see if you could maximize it. That would be fantastic.
Okay, very good.
Perfect.
Thank you. So our research really focused on what we call a citizen-centric digital capability framework. Why citizen-centric? Citizen-centric because that's how it's going to be sustainable. And how do we build that citizen-centric framework to go from our ambitions of digitization to actually our end results and outcome? And we've surveyed almost all countries, looking at the top 20 in the UN, United Nations EGDI ranking, the Electronic Government Development Index. And what we've seen in the top ranking countries is the approach to online services was always based on the needs of people or citizens that were consulted on the services, and services had a long spanning lifespan from the design phase to the usage phase to the improvement one. So a continuous cycle of improvement led at the highest level by the leadership of that particular service or that particular sector. And so we came up with what we call a fit for purpose operating model for digital capabilities at the public sector, with the enablers, that would be the legal and regulatory environment, with the investment, because you need budget to transform and to continue to improve, as well as the capabilities. These are the public sector functions that are needed for agencies, ministries, or government to sustain the transformation. Sorry, I'm having a bit of issues with my slides. Here we go. And our research posits that by focusing the digital transformation of a country or region or even city on the needs of citizens, the government leaders who are really the drivers of that transformation and the practitioners will make that triple impact, not only on improving people's lives. Examples were mentioned before that I'd like to pick up on, whether it's early warning systems, like in the case of Lebanon, whether it's savings on power consumption, or whether it's obtention of a permit, permission, visa, etc., that would all help increase the efficiency and enhance the effectiveness of a government. Saving people's time, saving on transport costs, carbon emission, traffic congestion, even paper, and allowing seamless and secure transactions to happen at a person's fingers. So citizen-centric digital transformation will promote development and enable both businesses and citizens to evolve from being passive consumers of information to active participants, co-creating new services that are more fit for 2021. And I just want to say, as an anecdote, most of our projects at the World Bank in digital government and digital transformation often deal with legal frameworks from the 1900 centuries, where all transactions happened on paper, in silo-based agencies, and sequentially. So now we have parallel processing with technology. We don't need paper, and people, objects, or assets are identified by unique IDs. So the sky is the limit in terms of co-creating new, smart, and agile solutions. And of course, design thinking as a basis, as a principle for designing these services is key. One of the things we've been really looking at is what we call the user-centric journey. So a user-centric journey example would be, for example, the life cycle of any person, from the beginning, from birth till the end, with everything else that every person has to go through based on their socioeconomic profile, if you will, from going to school, looking for jobs, getting married, buying houses, paying taxes, all the parts that are involved into being a good citizen, and all the interventions needed from governments. And today we are also aided by, as many speakers mentioned before, sensors, IoT, cell phone, a lot of data that is emitted automatically and that enriches the quality of the experience of the transactions for any specific life cycle. Of course, as many speakers said before, artificial intelligence, machine learning is also helping in that sense. And we are seeing already a lot of these applied, especially to agricultural sector, where we are in many of the World Bank projects on agriculture. We call them now digital agriculture. We're providing IoT sensors and sensors to really measure the water levels, the pollution, the crop readiness, etc. So all these that require a lot of science now in agriculture, especially to better exploit the technology around and to use it for good, for better productivity, for better revenues for the farmers, and less waste on the planet and on the environment, especially waste of water, waste of resources for the crops, food safety, etc. The user journey is something that has been difficult to implement in the public sector in many countries in the MENA region because it involves sweeping change in the traditional way governments deal with people, with the citizens. And really, the whole change management lies in that user journey, where multiple agencies now, which traditionally worked in silos for a particular transaction, have to all converge together towards an optimal service delivery based on that user journey. So here is the example of buying a house and all the transactions needed for that particular user journey, and how to ensure all the actors, not only public sector, but also private sector, everyone from the planning authorities to the environment agencies, to the land authority, to the insurance, to the bank for the loan, etc., are all involved in a seamless journey. And that this journey is really valid across the board, that it doesn't vary by bank, that it doesn't vary by region, and it ensures a harmonized approach within a specific country, and why not within a specific region, if we want to be better integrated within a single region with better cross-border data flow, procedures, etc. It makes sense when the countries in that particular region belong to an economic zone that want to adopt the same type of rules and procedures. So, like I said, this is a process that is very difficult. It takes sometimes several years. Technology helps in making it easier, especially as of today. Technology is much easier in terms of software development, piloting specific applications, visualizing them, and getting, of course, the user feedback on the look and feel. Because at the end of the day, government digitization can happen. It will be there, but the users have to come to it, have to test the service and provide feedback. And this is where we see that the capabilities of governments to absorb the feedback and solicit participation for specific services, not being afraid to change these and improve them, because nothing is perfect to start with, and using an iterative approach in collaboration and partnership with youth groups, academia, and other representatives of civil society is really the key to success for all of the top 10, 20 governments in the UN EGDI. And in the MENA region, we are seeing big progress when we look, for example, at the Gulf countries. There's where there's the most advancement. When we look at the UAEs, when we look at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, all really climbing in the ranking, it's precisely because they have been in the last few years soliciting feedback from citizens, from youth groups, from women associations to make sure that the services they're designing really fit for purpose. And this is just the framework that I just want to lay for you. And each one of these has a specific set of indicators to it. We try as much as possible to map the indicators to the SDGs, of course. Some indicators are very specific, like digital skills and literacy. So we really try there to be more like 2021 oriented, but digital leadership and governance has to do, of course, with having a digital strategy. Now, more and more, we're not looking anymore to digital government strategies, we're looking at AI strategy, another sign of really advanced thinking by government. And again, in the MENA region, the Gulf countries lead the way, followed by other more nascent countries' approaches. I'm thinking really of North Africa, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, putting an emphasis on AI now. And so we can peel the onion, if you will. This is what we call the onion. But really the most important thing for the strategic operating model is 4 aspects, and all come backed by the public sector: the organizational structure and role of digitization, the legal and regulatory framework, especially when it comes to data regulation, data privacy, open data, very important elements, and requiring constant updates to the existing frameworks. As we talked earlier about the early warning system, we talked about contact tracing for COVID, how much of that is permissible, how much of that require consent, even if it's for the global public good. These are all areas that need to be tackled in the legal and regulatory framework. Of course, along with the financing, digital transformations require beaucoup financing, as well as the change management and the retraining of the public capabilities, as well as partnership, sourcing, and the ecosystem of providers of all these innovative services. And there are several ways to organize for it, whether you fully integrate it, so you have a very whole of government-centered approach, kind of centralized, and then you remap and you regroup the agencies under it. This is like a sweeping change for government structure. Or you keep what you have and you do what is on the other side of the screen, which is the functional integration. You keep your ministries, your agencies, and you embed in it, in the standalone structure, you embed in it the elements of the digital transformation and the citizen-centeredness. And then you have the hybrid approach in the middle, where you have a semi-integrated matrix. You take the best of both worlds, you minimize the reorganizations, and you create centers of excellence that feed each one of these agencies and coordinates across them with common infrastructure, common principles. One common principle would be, for example, interoperability. Another one would be ask only once for data and make sure that there's compliance that exists across all the individual agencies. We are working recently with the new digital government authority created in Saudi Arabia, and this is precisely the role of that agency to really create compliance, best practices, and make sure that everyone follows while putting together the incentives for agencies to follow the new way of doing business for the government. Of course, the ecosystem is very important. We spoke about the citizens. We spoke about really addressing the different citizen demographics through existing societal structures, through the academic system, through private sector associations, trade groups, etc. And of course, for the leaders of the digitization, the companies that are ensuring, the private sector experts and integrators, the cloud providers, ensuring that they are part of the ecosystem and they are really aligning their offerings with the needs and making sure that this alignment is constantly evolving based on the needs expressed by the government and the citizen. The legal and the regulatory framework, we already talked about this, and we're looking at it on both sides, external and internal, the external area of concern and the internal area of concern. For the external, the legal framework will facilitate the increased use of digital technologies in market and civil society, and the internal, more like government facing, which would be the one facilitating the increased use of digital technology in the state, in the city, in the municipality, more what we used to call the G2G type of services. And for the internal, we are seeing most of the countries that are really pushing forward. And here in the MENA region, again, and to digress a bit from the Gulf, we're looking at countries like Jordan, for example. Jordan that has put enormous effort in digitization of paper-based record, whether it's getting vehicle permits, driving permits, or a judiciary, digitization of the judiciary for the Justice Department. This is something that has required a lot of legal and regulatory changes for the Ministry of Justice to be able to build and create these records, tie them to the particular ID, whether it's the person or the land or the non-movable asset, and make sure it is, for many of these records, geolocated, accessible, and mapped to the right geographical information system. If we're talking about digitization of land or of land assets, obviously a geographical information system that is interoperable and that is accessible, while at the same time keeping some of the data private and confidential as needed. The legal and regulatory framework is also, if I may just add to it, very important for many of the countries that are coming up with open data policies. And open data policies, you all know it, especially for environment and climate change, very important. If you put together the pollution or the carbon or the water levels through time series in a particular region, in a particular country, you can see the changes through time, and often you can see the climate degradation data. This we are really pushing all together, all donors actually, to have this under open data format, following good example and good practices from the UK, from the Netherlands, from Denmark, all leading in that space. And of course, to be able to manage all these data, to write the right algorithm, we really need the scientists. We need at the local level in each one of the MENA countries to have very strong STEM base of expert, STEM as in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this is a part where really financing higher education, providing scholarship to talented young kids who cannot afford going to school and getting a 4-year undergrad and a 2-year master's, which is what you typically need in these jobs. This is where a lot of effort is also going on the World Bank side and a lot of our partners to ensure higher education is properly funded, scientific research is funded. Recently, we've had this study for the continent of Africa on what would it take to connect each African university to national research network. The number is quite large. We're talking about, multi-million, even billion, especially for large countries. But it's a must, especially as we try to ensure the scientific capabilities are there at the local level for all our client countries, and they don't just rely on the North for their research and data. Big data, of course, big data is much needed, especially for machine learning, and how to make sure for the public sector, big data is used for good, for better decision-making, for better design of roads, of electrical grid, more and more for reusing infrastructure, For example, in digital, we are pushing for the concept of dig once. So we are helping our clients work amongst themselves between ministries of digital economy, ministries of transport and energy to make sure broadband fiber or broadband over power line is used whenever there is public work that is happening. So we're not digging multiple times in the same location for different types of infrastructure. I'm getting to my last slides here. Of course, new digital roles will need to happen in the public sector. These will have to be official roles, whether we have a chief information officer, a chief data officer, a chief digital officer, information security or cybersecurity. These roles have to be there. And we are seeing many of our leading countries in MENA have these not only at a state level, but also in all the big ministries, especially health, education, and growing. And these require specific profiles of digital knowledge, computer science, information systems, and we would like to see more of these, and more of these informing the ministers of finance and interior in terms of designing digital transformation. Some considerations for the leaders of digital transformation, just to leave it at that with open questions. What data should be open and public? What do we allow to leverage public data? How do you upskill our people to be able to run and maintain AI-based solution? The algorithm, who's designing them, who owns them, who modifies them based on user feedback, and how do we ensure the transparency of all that? And for that, of course, developing an open digital mindset and a culture of digital is very important. Here I'm thinking of Finland, of Estonia, of the UK, many of these countries, of South Korea, and how to make a digital mindset as part of the leadership profile. Leaders themselves who correspond with their government counterparts electronically, do not need to send fax or papers, simplify interactions themselves, and by their own behavior in government, really are trailblazers in pushing for a digital culture and a digital mindset for the public sector. Last, how do we prepare the workforce for this brave new world? And how can we work to make sure digital transformation is as smooth as possible? How do we hire new hires with the right profile to create that culture and that digital mindset? At the same time, how do we create job security and trust while constantly reskilling the existing workforce? We always talk about youth. We have excellent workers in government in their 40s, in their 50s. How do we make sure these more savvy and mature employees keep motivated and keep getting reskilled and use the tools, the new tools, to be more excellent at their job, while at the same time attracting and keeping digital talents and reskilling leadership? And this is not something that can be done overnight. It's something that will require a lot of also a lot of exchanges between different countries. We see a lot of our clients requesting us to provide and convene knowledge sharing events. This is one of them. For example, Saudi Arabia wants to know how South Korea did it. Ghana wants to know how Saudi Arabia did it. We have constantly this exchange of knowledge between top leaders, and we think this is the best way. This is the way that is not written in books. There's no manual about it. And that's how a lot of these good practices circulate globally. So this is it. I'm going to stop now. And thank you very much for your attention. I'll take questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Samia. That was a fantastic tool de table of everything you're working on. And as you say, the citizen-centric approach is fundamental also in terms of climate action, because if we're connecting back to what Inger Anderson said yesterday, 70% of greenhouse gas emissions are based on individual household decision-making. That goes back to citizens. So if we're going to influence greenhouse gas emissions, we've got to start at that citizen level. And as you say, we need to use the technologies to do that. I will eventually ask you a question about not what governments are doing, but the role of private sector in influencing those decisions. And how do we begin to have these conversations between public and private sectors, specifically on issues like nudging towards the kind of behaviors that we want to see out there. But thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. We're going to continue with the agenda before we hit more questions. So I'm now going to turn it over to my dear colleague, Riina Otsuka from the UNDP. She's a digital innovation specialist on nature, culture, climate, and energy. And she's going to present this wonderful new initiative called the Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability, or CODES. So Riina, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, David. So yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from New York. My name is Riina. As David just introduced me, I'm the Digital Innovation Specialist working at the United Nations Development Program. And it's a huge pleasure to be here as a part of this wonderful conference today and to introduce to you all the Coalition of Digital Environmental Sustainability, or in short, we call it CODES. So what is CODES? It is a global coalition, and it is a process that is running in support of the United Nations Secretary General's roadmap for digital cooperation. The roadmap calls on the international community to explore the implications of our digitalized society through multi-stakeholder consultation. And because we noticed that there was actually no work stream that is focused on environmental sustainability, the co-champions got together to fill this void and initiated this consultation process. The co-champions, as you can see our logos here, are consisted of different types of institutions. You can see the German Environment Agency, Kenya Ministry of Environment and Forestry, the International Science Council, Future Earth, the UN Environment Program, and UN Development Program. So you can see that it is a mixture of different types of representations. And what does CODES do? It is still an evolving process, and we are trying to evolve all of our modus operandi here, but we have a consensus of working on mainly 4 areas. The first is to co-create a vision and framework on what environmental sustainability in this digital age is. The second is to establish a common acceleration plan with stakeholders. The third is to convene a community of practice to coordinate and move in coherent ways so that we can collectively move toward the vision that we're trying to set here. And fourthly, to mobilize the scientific community toward this vision. I must say that the CODES process has been very experimental, and it was honestly a very challenging process, and it is still continuing. But basically, well, we had 2 multi-stakeholder roundtables where we harvested ideas through collective intelligence exercises. So we're trying to really build this vision bottom up instead of having, something that we show to the world. We're trying to really be truly inclusive in the building of the vision and the plan. All of the intelligence we collected fed into the report, which outlines our vision and framework. In June, we had a conference where we collected inputs more for the acceleration plan, which we are still drafting right now. And both the report and plan, since it is in draft mode, we will further develop it through the rest of the year. And if you go to our consultation platform, I'll share the URL later in the chat, you can still put input into the report and to the acceleration plan, and it will be an open process for the rest of the time. Now this, So this is the draft framework that we developed, again, through this consultation process. You see that in the vision, we have a future in which digital technologies enable environmental sustainability and support a sustainable civilization. There are 6 design principles that, again, we harvested through the roundtables. There are 3 strategic routes that we identified that are important. So the first is to shape digital innovation toward a common vision and set of values. Now, digital technologies can radically change the way we deal with major environmental issues. So the question we're asking here is, how can we actually catalyze such technological innovation and application? We already heard from a lot of the panelists today that it's not just about the technology, it's really about how the technology is, and then what is the policy? Is there a policy environment that's actually going to accelerate these changes, and the social context as well? So we're trying to bring together different stakeholders from policy or from the private sector, academia, or even users of the technologies, so that we can think through of how we can actually catalyze a change using these new technologies that are coming up. The second is to build an inclusive and environmentally sustainable digital infrastructure and standards. So we can't really claim digital as sustainable if almost 10% of all energy and 4% of carbon emission comes from the ICT sector. So here again, the question is, how can we ensure universal connectivity while also ensuring that it's maintained with sustainable energy or with minimum material use and toxic emissions or sound waste management? And thirdly, to harness digital technologies to create new incentives, behaviors, and business models that scale environmental sustainability. So as much as e-commerce brings growth and livelihood opportunities, it can also be harmful to the environment by encouraging unsustainable consumption. Again, the question is, how can we code environmental sustainability into the value chain or through algorithms to enhance a green economy? And all of these work streams, we would like to work with the priority sectors that you see, such as data, infrastructure, energy, people, and finance. And it should be governed in an agile manner. Lastly, I just wanted to talk briefly of why UNDP is a part of CODES. UNDP operates in 170 countries and territories, supporting governments towards sustainable development. We embarked on a digital transformation path in 2019 with the launch of a digital strategy and the appointment of a chief digital officer. And as we consider digital as a context that we're living in, we're working to transform ourselves internally, as well as support the efforts of the government partners to fully leverage on digital technologies and socioeconomic changes that it can bring. So the map here shows we have over 750 projects that we support on the ground in environment and climate change interventions. It is quite fascinating to think that in each and every one of these projects, there is an opportunity to increase its impact with the power of digital technologies. And there's also a chance to mitigate any potential consequence of digitalization. So we've seen, for example, things like, mobile payments are actually, it's phasing in. The mobile payments and cheap sensors and new pay-as-you-go business models catalyzed the spread of solar mini-grids in the last mile. And we saw how satellite imagery and other new data sources can better prepare vulnerable communities to climate-related risks. Also, geospatial data, real-time sensors, or blockchain-based verification can potentially open avenues for new financial mechanisms, such as payment for ecosystem service or interest different types of impact investments. So basically, we really believe in the immense potential and threat that digital can bring to environmental sustainability. That's why we're very keen to build with you all a common vision, partner, and learn from the CODES community. So with that, I invite you to please join the consultation platform. You can see the URL here, I think, and to take place in this multi-stakeholder process from this URL, please. So we're still open to inputs on the report and acceleration plan, and we look forward to connecting with you all on the great work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rina. That was a fantastic exploration of CODES. I am also a member of CODES. I'm one of the 743 members as I just looked this morning, and it truly is a really dynamic community of practitioners from all sectors all around the world, really looking to accelerate the use of digital technologies for sustainability. So definitely, if you're into this space, do join up. It is an amazing coalition. Our final presentation is going to be from the Internet Society. Ms. Nurmaini El Sadani, from the Regional Vice President for the Middle East and Africa from the Internet Society, will provide an exposition on, again, this idea of collaboration and coalitions of the willing. Please, Nurmaini, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Nurmaini El Sadani from the Internet Society Regional Vice President. Allow me to share my screen so that we can start the discussion. Okay, I'm speaking you actually from Cairo, Egypt. I'm located there, and I'm representing the Internet Society, and the Internet Society is one of the maybe oldest organizations that is related to the internet industry in general, established in December 1992. And the reason actually of forming or establishing the Internet Society was due to the need at that point in time to provide a home for the Internet Engineering Task Force, what we call it now, the IETF. And those are the people who are considered to be the founders of the internet. I'm very actually happy to be the last in your conference to speak about the internet and the digitalization, because I think without a sound infrastructure and without having internet for everyone, whatever we were discussing will not be feasible to be completed. So my presentation will tackle what we are doing, because we are considered to be one of the technical arms of the internet, or the technical stakeholder, part of the technical stakeholder of the internet. And we have a very interesting mission to consider. But before going into our mission and vision, I would like to introduce us as one of the pioneering organizations that is globally working online. So before even the COVID, we are an organization with two headquarters, one at the US and another one in Geneva. However, we have representation over about all over the countries of the globe, about 142 staff working from home. Meeting online usually, and before the COVID, of course, we were meeting occasionally in kind of retreats and so on physical meetings. We have as well a few arms with whom we work or we implement our mission and vision and goals through. So one of the very strong arms, and we have it as well in the MENA region, we call it chapters. So we have what we call Internet Society chapters, who connect us with the community in that particular country to disseminate what we believe is of usefulness to the people in this specific country. We have members, whether these members could be organizational member or individual members. We have, of course, board of trustees, and we have followers whom are considered to be influencers of how the internet should be working, and advocate for that. Our mission is pretty interesting. Our work aligns with our goals to have the internet open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy. We believe, or our vision says, that internet should be for everyone, everywhere, at minimum cost, so that we can familiarize and distribute or raise the awareness of the importance of being connected online in a reliable manner for everyone. Not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas as well. Our strategic goals are built into three main pillars: build the internet, promote the internet, defend the internet as a trustworthy source of good in the world in general. For that, we thought in 2020, with the pandemic going on, or striking the world with what has been going after the pandemic evolves, to create or to establish about 8 projects divided into 2 main components, what we call internet strong and what we call internet growth. And the number of projects, up to 8 projects, constitute these kind of, or these 2 pillars, the growth and the strength of the internet. So we have what we call community network, and I can shed light as we move ahead with that in my presentation. We have, of course, the infrastructure layer of the internet and the internet exchange points. We have what we call the enabling environment, or how the internet way of modeling, or how the internet should be working as well, so that we can help government and decision makers to take the right decision. We have as well another project called measurement and the manners, which is very, very important for routing security. So we cannot have internet without having secure connectivity on the layer of the infrastructure. And this is our focus, as I mentioned earlier. in 2020 and through the pandemic, we have been very active working with our community and with the governments in all regions. Actually, we have just published the 2020 impact report, and this is the URL. If someone is interested, you can look at it. But very, very quickly, we have been able to foster the development of the internet exchange points, and the internet exchange points is something very, very crucial and important and a vital criticality for within the internet ecosystem, which is the internet, which is called the IXP. So we fostered the establishment and the development of these points of exchange over the internet in 26 countries. Only in 2020, we have trained about 1,400 network operators in 60 countries on routing security. Again, this is very, very important because this constitutes a matter of securing the internet layer, the internet infrastructure layer across the globe. So working on this layer is very, very important. And we have promoted and supported the establishment of the newly concept of availing the internet in rural areas and even in some of the urban areas that is congested with the internet connectivity through our project that is called Community Network. And this has been integrated in one of our yearly reports that we issue called the Impact Report. For MENA, and this is my area of work within the society, so we believe that that all the MENA maybe leaders are very much concentrating about the digital transformation, and they are speaking on different areas. Part of their concerns is having to smart cities and green technologies all over and so on, and that would eventually necessitate to have a layer of infrastructure that can avail or can provide the adequate kind of infrastructure that they can build the kind of applications that they would aspire to have within their development on the digitalization of their economies. So we provide a kind of consultation to the government within the region, introducing the Internet Society as a technology advisor that is neutral. So we just avail best practices, we just avail case studies from the different part of the globe, and we advise them how they better shape their policies and how they can construct their infrastructure in the most up-to-date level, so that they can reach their objectives and goals without falling into kind of problems that maybe others have been falling at before. And we do this free of charge. We just provide consultancy as a believer in the internet as a method of having a good in the society. We as well partner with the community in the different within their different layers. So we work with the technical community within a country, we work with the civil society, we work with the government officials, we work with international organizations, and we work as well with the youth, because within the internet, everyone has a role, and we believe that we can contribute to the different roles of the different communities for having a better internet. And as I mentioned, we always introduce ourselves as a neutral source of information that they can rely on. How are we doing this? We do this through partnership in the implementation of some of the projects that we believe that could be useful to the region. So as an example, we work definitely within the scope of the InfraComDev, which is the infrastructure development project for building IXP, because the region still lacks some of having internet exchange points in some countries, and some other countries like Egypt and Sudan have the oldest maybe IXP in the region, but we believe that it is not yet utilized in its full power. So we provide kind of consultancy and advise how to develop either the existing IXPs or to actually establish one from A to Z. So we take them from shaping the regulatory framework that could provide the business model for an IXP, if I may call it as such, up till the technical capacity building that is required to raise the capacities of the engineers and even the senior officials to run the IXP and administrate it in the best way possible. We introduced the term or the project community network, and community network is something that is very, very I believe promising for a region like MENA, because still we lack having internet everywhere in the MENA region. And we believe that community network can help this if decision makers really understand what community network is. Community network is building a network by the community and to the community with the blessing of the government and the private sector there. So it is kind of partnership from maybe 4 partners. So the community, which is the people that lives in this specific area, the government, of course, represented in the regulator and the Ministry of Communication, the private sector, because the spectrum and the network itself has to be connected to the incumbent, for example, network or one of the big mobile operators there, but it waives the burden of large investment from the shoulder of the government as well as from the shoulder of the private sector, and rely this dedicate this to the community so that they feel the belongingness to this network and they raise their capacities as well, and therefore it avails job-given opportunities in a new format for the community there in that rural area. And we are now working actually with Yemen to establish the first community network in Hadramaut, which will be very interesting if we have the pleasure to meet you in another maybe setting in the beginning of next year. I can share with you the results of that cooperation and partnership with the Yemeni government and technical community. We are doing this because, as I said, we cannot believe actually the world without internet. And I think that 2020 with the COVID pandemic rising, I think we all believe that there will be no way other than having a sound internet for everyone. And that is why we are trying to work more and more with the different governments and the different layers, as I mentioned, to enhance their connectivity and to engage everyone in the loop so that we can really build the internet ecosystem from an infrastructure and technical point of view. I think that would be all, except that maybe I as well would like to share our capacity building online program that is as well free of charge. Everyone can enroll and benefit from, and we have been very active promoting this portal to raise the capacities of our MENA engineers in the different layers of the internet. And as you see, the numbers would be impressive in some countries. So we have 185 participants from Oman, Sudan had 104, Morocco has 51, and this was only in first quarter of this year, 2021. We cannot do all that alone, so I'm glad that I'm here to share with you a brief, very, very short brief about us as Internet Society and us as a MENA team. And I look forward to further cooperation in different kind of activities that we can believe that would be of better for everyone in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nermani. Thank you for that excellent overview of the Internet Society and the various activities you're undertaking and the methodologies. We're running short of time, so I'm going to ask one question to all the panelists. And if I could ask you for a quick reaction, that would be fantastic. And I'll go down the line in the order in which you spoke. But the one question that I have is this disconnect between how long it takes to create human relationships and trust between people and organizations and the rapid evolutionary pace of digital technologies. These are going at very, very different rates, kind of trust building versus technology. And I'm just wondering if you have advice on, like, how do we accelerate the trust building process across these multi-stakeholder groups so they can actually come to consensus kind of as fast as the technology is evolving? Do you have one nugget of knowledge for the group on, you know, how do you accelerate that trust building process across such a wide multi-stakeholder group? Dietrich, I'm going to ask that question to you first, again, with a very short and succinct answer, please.
Thank you. And that's indeed quite a difficult one. And from our experience, what we try to do is that it's not a one-shot initiative. So we try to keep the momentum as throughout the year. Of course, in our work, the conference itself is let's say the major milestone, but throughout the year we try to bring some let's say dynamics into our community on a regular basis. So we have small scale events in different on the occasion of different other activities, and of course communication is key. I think we have a quite strong communication strategy in which we also, let's say, involve all our stakeholders. So it's not a unidirectional initiative. So we try to, let's say, position our community as a really co-creation and collaborative effort. And I think that's key. And you need some patience as well, but consistency is key, I think.
Thank you so much. And Samia, the same question to you. And I think in your context, it's especially the case in terms of, citizens and trusting companies, trusting governments. How do you accelerate that trust building process? What lessons do you have for us?
This is the billion-dollar question, David. And I really like what Dietrich said. To add my perspective, really trust comes with showing results. And showing results, they don't have to be perfect, but the effort has to be there. I also liked what Dietrich said about consistency. I'll add to it a sort of empathy and outreach, and it's a mutual loop, a continuous feedback loop of communication, constant updates. You would see that the governments that are the most trusted are those that update the most frequently their website to reflect evolution of things. So I would say consistency, transparency, and empathy with results. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as you say, that results question is the other billion-dollar question. How do you drive to results, and how do you measure those results and make them tangible? Rina, the question goes to you in terms of trust building across the membership of codes, and how do we accelerate that process?
Sure, thank you. And David, we worked on this together, so we know how difficult it is. But I think it's the same thing. Whether it be about digital, it's all the same thing. We have to listen to each other. It is really about listening to each other's perspective and diverse perspectives. And without that, you can't really build trust. And if there's something that digital can help on it, it's probably these different tools that we have now. We can have these calls with different parts of the world at the same time, and we can use these boards that we all these workshop tools. There are very good tools for collecting this perspectives and trying to synthesize those together. So I think it's really about the basic is the same as because we're humans. We just have to listen to each other, try to be open and inclusive to different perspectives. I really believe, David, I'm not sure if you remember, but in one of the roundtables, one of the participants said, this was actually a very unusual experience of feeling that I was really heard during a UN process. And I think, giving that kind of experience is really, really important. And we have to really keep trying to get better at it. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And yeah, I do remember that. And you just gave me goosebumps remembering it again, because it really did feel like we were offering people a voice and that we were engaging and that they were being heard, as you said. So thank you for that. Hermione, the final bit of insight goes to you in terms of how have you built trust? Your coalition is a huge number of actors. So how have you gone about building trust, and what advice do you have for colleagues on this essential question of trust building?
I think from my perspective, collaboration would come key in the way we can work together at this point in time, and with a better understanding always to what the internet has been evolving how the internet has been evolving, the very initial phases of the internet, so that whenever a decision is being made now, it actually really how the internet works. So if we believe that the internet has been established as an open platform where everyone can contribute with some small development, small steps, and this is how we have now the Wide Web. When a decision is being taken right now, it has to take into consideration that this is the nature of the internet, so that they don't take a decision that might cut the internet at one point in time, or mess how the internet works as an innovative platform that would allow all of us to contribute, each one in his own way and as per his own expertise.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that wraps up into the idea of agency and sort of enabling people to contribute to this broader transformation process, which is exactly where Samia was also talking about. So thank you very much, the four panelists, for those excellent presentations, for sharing your insights. We are out of time. There were some questions in the chat, and I'm hoping that our facilitation team can kind of connect those questions to the different panelists so that they can be answered, because they were very relevant. I'm going to hand the floor back to Mr. Abdel Menem, and I believe we're going to move into the closing session without a break. But Abdel Menem, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, for the great facilitation and for the great session. I really enjoyed it. So it's really very informative session. So thank you all panelists in this session. So thank you very much. Yes, I think we are now coming to the conclusion of this conference. We will not have a break so that we don't lose our great participants. We have almost 100 participants online with us. So thank you very much for all your engagement with us throughout the 2 days. So allow me, before we close officially the conference, to highlight some key messages from the 2 days that we had during the conference. So let me share my screen. So I hope you can see it. All right, so the first day after the opening of Mr. Sami Dimasi, UNEP representative and regional director, we had a very interesting high-level panel where we had ministers from the regions talking about the aspect of the digital transformation from West Asia perspective. We had also the executive director of UNEP who set the scene for the whole conference. And throughout the discussion from the high-level panel, we can gather three main messages. Number one is there is really a strong commitment of UNEP in driving digital technology implementation in West Asia. Number two, inclusion of digital technology and government vision and roadmap and we saw also examples of implementation in countries. The third element, harnessing a sustainability mindset, embedding in the education system. So these are the main highlights of the high-level panel. Then we moved to the other session related to digital transformation in West Asia, where we had different panelists talking about really the digital transformation for environmental sustainability, but also the regional priorities in the region. And we also saw some experience from other region and also country level experience. And from this session, we can gather that there is a need for in-depth view, to understand really the three planetary crises: the climate change, the nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste, and how it affects the region. We saw also examples of digital transformation initiative in the West Asia region. So this is really, we are very proud of the country experience. Also, enabling the role of digital technology to create transparency, efficiency, and coordination, and more importantly, digital transformation role in transformation that needs to happen across sectors and systems. Then we move to the second or third session related to tackling pollution, where we had also different presentation talking about pollution, mainly waste management and air pollution as the top priority for the region. And from this session, it was really clear that there is a need to shift towards circular economy through effective data-driven and technology-enabled action on the ground. Also, there is a need for combating air pollution by using innovative technologies, having visibility and managing pollution at source. After that, we move to another session related to the tackling biodiversity loss. Also different presentation from different countries, and the gathering from that session, there is a potential of special data and mapping capability that really needed to enable better decision-making that allow different policy-making, planning, and translate them into actions in managing protected area, marine and coastal zone, and conservation of endangered species. Then we had the climate change session, tackling the climate change. Also, different speakers talked about the utilization of the digital tools for climate change, and the gathering from that session, artificial intelligence and machine learning's role is really needed to rapidly mitigate the climate change, and also adaptation strategy and formulation to combat climate change. Bringing climate change mitigation topic into practical applications such as effective and efficient energy management, and then technology application on disaster risk preparedness and response. Then we had the last session related to digital coalition and for collective impact. Here, the main gathering we can take from this session that global collective efforts, multi-stakeholder cooperation is key to scale up with an integrated approach, to rethink our approach on SDGs. Right policy environment is needed to scale digital capability. Leadership must drive digital transformation. And then digital transformation must be fit for purpose, keeping the following outcomes in mind. One, improve lives, improve business environment, and enhance efficiency and effectiveness of government. So these are the main highlights of the 2 days conference. And thank you very much for being with us, and allow me now to read to you on behalf of our regional director, who unfortunately has to go for another meeting with another minister. So I will read his final closing remark on his behalf. So I will stop sharing my screen here. All right. Excellency, distinguished speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here concluding our Digital Transformation Conference for Environmental Sustainability. The main purpose of this meeting was to enhance our understanding on how we can effectively roll out breakthrough technologies in the region to enhance our capacity to curb detrimental effects of climate change and threats to the environment. The conference was also meant to galvanize efforts from all stakeholders to support this objective. I said in the beginning of this conference that we are here to exchange knowledge and gather best practices And these 2 days have indeed become a platform for this exchange between us and our esteemed panelists. And we trust with you as well through the questions and debates. But what this conference also manifested was the commitment and efforts by governments, policymakers, strategic partners, and other United Nations agencies to lead their communities to the digital culture within their respective sectors. We saw Saudi Arabia promising step to establish a digital government authority to scale up the efficiency of its government work and adopt the government digital transformation model to develop digital and proactive government. We witnessed not only now, but this year, a sound shift towards digitalization within the education sector. And Bahrain Higher Education Council reiterated its efforts to serve higher education institution and opened our eyes to how technology has ensured the continuity of teaching during this pandemic. Jordan showed us how information and communication technology can contribute to reducing pollution, where we witnessed their adoption of an intelligent transportation system with ability to gather, organize, analyze, use, and share information about transportation. We now understand the need for a strong commitment to environmental sustainability, leveraging on digital technologies. All levels necessary for implementation were emphasized. Since persistent gaps exist in relation to the implementation of UNEP medium-term strategy on digital transformation, in coming up with a work plan, a roadmap for the region is necessary to make this happen. We saw how we need to actively involve policymakers to create enabling policies that will encourage adoption of these technologies into environmental monitoring and scenario planning. This is not an end itself, but can be a mean to live with the threshold of our planet. Finally, the conference highlighted the fundamental needs to finance all our initiative that needs to be done. And active involvement of private sector will be crucial to ensure sustainable business models are made available to dramatically shift climate trajectory. This will allow us to reach the last mile. Acting together, we can generate change that will save lives and the planet. To conclude, I would like to mention that the summary report will be finalized based on the views expressed during these 2 days that will become a basis for the region's digital transformation roadmap. I thank you all and hope we meet with you again soon. So thank you very much. This was the closing remarks of the Regional Director of UNEP West Asia Office in Bahrain, Mr. Sami Dimasi. Thank you for joining us and looking forward to see you again soon. Thank you very much.